Chapter 1605. Yu snorted. Mommy will definitely like my cake more. Xiao Yichen whimpered and looked down pitifully. You're a bully. Are you saying that my present isn't nice? I can't help it. It's your fault for being so stupid. But you're so stupid, so you've already improved a lot. Xiao Yichen wagged his tail again. Really? I think so too, hee. Then he pestered Wuxia and asked, Daddy, what birthday present did you prepare for Mommy? Wuxia smiled deeply and pressed his slender fingers against his lips, pretending to be mysterious. Xiao Yichen shouted, Stingy! Daddy is so stingy. Just as Yu had expected, Xianxia had indeed forgotten that it was her birthday today. She was completely unaware of the upcoming birthday surprise. Early in the morning, she rushed to the set, changed into an ancient costume, put on makeup, and participated in the filming. The sun was shining brightly these few days, so there were many outdoor scenes. Xianxia was inevitably nervous because it was her first time using a wire. On the set, Director Gu and the martial arts master were nervously discussing the upcoming wire scene. Xianxia changed into a pink silk dress. The next scene was her encounter with the male lead, Yunqing, played by Hua Jin. In the plot, the prince's mansion was holding a birthday party. Qin Shuiyao, who was playing the role of Qin Shuiyao, climbed a tree to pick up a kite. She accidentally slipped and fell from the tree. The male lead appeared and saved her. When the two met, Qin Shuiyao fell in love with Yunqing at first sight. There were two scenes today. One was between Xianxia and Hua Jin, and the other was between Xianxia and Lin Ji. Xianxia changed into her costume and was familiarizing herself with the camera position. Positioning was very important when filming, so she had to familiarize herself with it in advance. In addition, she was worried that she would not perform well in the wire scene and was under a lot of pressure. Suddenly, there was a fierce commotion on the set. Xianxia turned around and saw countless flashing lights. It turned out that Lin Ji had changed into her costume and appeared on the set. Today, there were many reporters visiting the set. However, as the media, the main visitors were naturally the female lead, Lin Ji, and the male lead, Hua Jin. The audience was looking forward to the collision and sparks between the #1 young man in ancient costumes and the #1 actress in ancient costumes. Therefore, as soon as Lin Ji appeared on the set, all the reporters were on the move. They aimed their cameras at her and flashed wildly. Many other actors and actresses were looking at Lin Ji enviously. As expected of Lin Ji. As the female lead, she has so many media reporters visiting her. How glorious! A female supporting character sighed with envy. Who knew if these reporters were hired by her? Lin Ji hasn't been in the limelight recently. She's not even as popular as Xianxia. These reporters might have been hired. Another supporting character cursed inwardly. Along the way, Lin Ji's appearance caused a stir on the set. She seemed to enjoy the sensation and smiled at the reporters from time to time. She seemed to have come prepared. She had on exquisite makeup and was posing and flirting under the flashing lights. All the reporters surrounded her excitedly and handed microphones to her from time to interview her. Lin Ji noticed that Xianxia was also looking at her. The corners of her mouth curled up and her eyes revealed a smug look, as if she was silently showing off. Xianxia frowned. Chapter 1606. Didn't she know that her pretentious appearance made her look like a clown? She turned around and continued reading her script. Gu Xiaoyang heard the commotion and turned around abruptly. He frowned when he saw Lin Ji surrounded by reporters. Director Gu had a strange temper. He was very particular about the rules of the set. During filming, he strictly forbade any form of visits, let alone a high-profile one like Lin Ji's. If the media were to enter the set during filming, it would be detrimental to the set. It wasn't that they weren't allowed to visit the set, but they were filming and were not allowed to do anything unrelated to the filming. Old Zhang, where did these reporters come from? Director Gu asked with a frown. The script editor shook his head. Director Gu slammed the table and said angrily, "Didn't I order time and time again to seal off the set during filming and not allow any media or fans to enter?" Director Gu, I've already sent people to seal off the set. I don't know what's going on either. Director Gu threw down his script and walked up to Lin Ji. He waved his hand and said, "Now is not the time to visit the set. Get lost." Director Gu was known for his fiery temper. The reporters didn't dare to offend him, so they scrambled away with their equipment at his command. Lin Ji was left behind with an awkward expression. Director Gu Xiaoyang didn't wait for her to explain and scolded, "Shut up. Lin Ji, didn't I warn you not to cause any trouble on set? You're acting in my film as the female lead. Do you think you're good at acting? Or do you think you're so good that you can be so lawless and arrogant on set? How dare you let the reporters in during filming? Don't you know that I hate it when outsiders come in during filming?" Director Gu didn't give Lin Ji any face in front of everyone. Lin Ji's face turned green and red. She was extremely embarrassed. "Director Gu, you've misunderstood me. I don't know how these reporters got in." "You don't know?" Director Gu sneered. "Don't you know best how they got in? Why are you acting dumb in front of me? Do you think I'm easy to fool? Are you a best actress? Or an A-lister? Why did those reporters only take pictures of you and not the others? Do I have to be more straightforward? Why did you disregard the interests of the crew and consider the feelings of others? Have you considered my thoughts?" Gu Xiaoyang mercilessly exposed her in front of everyone, making Lin Ji even more embarrassed. The supporting actress who had guessed that Lin Ji had hired a reporter to visit her on set sneered. "I knew it." Ha! Lin Ji still wanted to explain. Gu Xiaoyang didn't want to listen to her excuses. "Look at your face. What the hell is that makeup on? Didn't I ask the makeup artist to do willowy eyebrows and cherry lips for you? Take a look at yourself and look in the mirror." Lin Ji hired a reporter to visit her at work. In order to look more photogenic, she especially asked the makeup artist to put on Korean-style makeup. Gu Xiaoyang scolded her harshly. Lin Ji felt too ashamed to show her face. Director Gu, Lin Ji's eyes were misty with tears and she was about to cry. She deliberately acted pitiful in order to gain Director Gu's understanding. Chapter 1607. Lin Ji, I'm warning you for the last time, don't play any more tricks. If you anger me, I don't care if you're the female lead or not, I'll cut you into a side character. I'll also give you a heads up while I'm at it. Anyway, the filming has just started, so it doesn't matter even if I kick you out of the cast. Don't blame me for falling out with you when the time comes. Anyway, the female lead in his heart was never this actress. If she were to play any tricks again, he did not mind kicking her out, and replacing Yun Shirshir with her was exactly what he wanted. Yun Shirshir was the Qin Changle in his heart. Not only did she look good, but her acting skills were also better than the actress's. Alas, the actress was one step ahead and snatched the role from him. Gu Xiaoyang was still sulking because of this matter. Lin Ji's financial backer had invested a lot in the movie, so Director Gu suppressed his anger. "Go wash my makeup and redo it," Gu Xiaoyang said and left. Under the mocking and curious gazes of the crowd, the actress could only grit her teeth awkwardly and return to the dressing room unhappily to do her makeup. The director walked over to Yun Shirshir, who was seriously reading the script. He nodded in satisfaction when he saw that she was focused on it. Only then did he return to discuss the wire arrangement with the martial arts director. Mu Shi happened to be delivering water to Yun Shirshir. When she saw this scene, she excitedly went up to her and said with a smile, "Shirshir, the director has been looking at you just now." "What?" "He stood beside you and looked at you for a long time. I think he saw that you were seriously reading the script and was very satisfied with your attitude. That's why he smiled in relief." Yun Shirshir smiled and said, "Mu Shi, I'm a little nervous. I heard that if I'm not careful with the wire, I'll fall down." "Oh please. Do you think the martial arts director on set is just for decoration? Don't worry, it'll be very safe." Mu Shi comforted her. Hua Jin also finished his makeup and rushed to the set. Yun Shirshir looked up and saw him appear. She was stunned. His first reaction was that Hua Jin's title of the best young actor in ancient costumes was not undeserved. He was dressed in a crescent white robe and had an elegant demeanor. His handsome hair was draped over his shoulders, and his beautiful and exquisite facial features were embellished with makeup. His beauty was even more breathtaking. Her charm was so outstanding that it overshadowed the beauty of the female lead. Her every frown and smile was captivating. This was the first time she had acted with Hua Jin in a scene. Hence, it was also the first time she had seen Hua Jin in his ancient costume. It wasn't that she hadn't seen Hua Jin without makeup. His skin was very good, his facial features were very three-dimensional, and his eyebrows and eyes had the unique charm of an ancient handsome man. His charming eyes were like silk, the corners of his eyes were long and narrow, and when he looked back, his smile was enchanting. Yun Shirshi's mind wandered for a moment before she exclaimed in shock, "Gosh! Hua Jin's ancient costume shocked me." At the side, Mu Shi also came back to her senses. Shirshir, gosh. Hua Jin's ancient costume is so stunning. Even if it's the real person, it's better than many of the photos of young actors in ancient costumes. It's so beautiful. She could not suppress her voice, so everyone heard her praise and could not help but look over. Even Hua Jin could vaguely hear her excited voice. He looked in Yun Shirshir and Mu Shi's direction with a meaningful gaze. Yun Shirshir felt embarrassed. Mu Shi, can you speak a little louder? Chapter 1608. Hua Jin suddenly walked toward Yun Shirshir. Yun Shirshir was stunned. She turned around and thought that Hua Jin was going behind her, but she realized that there was no one behind her. When she turned around, Hua Jin was already in front of her. He was not as tall as Mu Yaja, but he was still very tall at 1.8 meters. When he bent down to look at her up close, she could even see his flawless and perfect skin. It was as if it could be broken by the slightest breeze. What was even more stunning was his pair of deep eyes that seemed to be bewitching and could make people fall for him uncontrollably. Mu Shi was already stunned when she saw Hua Jin walking over. Yun Shirshir came back to her senses and pursed her lips. She could not help but take a step back. Just as she took a step back, Hua Jin took a step forward. Yun Shirshir frowned and took 2 more steps back with displeasure in her eyes. Hua Jin, on the other hand, smiled and took 2 more steps forward. His strides were bigger than hers, so he could not wait to be right in front of her. Yun Shirshir could even feel his warm breath on her forehead. Her heart was beating like thunder. This man, what was he trying to do? He approached her silently, just like the first time backstage at the press conference. Yun Shirshir could not understand what he was trying to do. Hua Jin's good-looking lips curled up. He lowered his head to look at her and smiled. "Are you shy?" When he spoke, his voice was gentle and pleasant. His voice was not as rough as a man's, nor was it as deep and mellow as Mu Yaja's. Instead, it was as magnetic as a clear spring. Yun Shirshir could not help but ask, "What are you trying to do?" Yun Shirshir. He called her name and smiled devilishly as he tilted his head slightly. "It's our first time acting together." "Yes." "So." Hua Jin dragged out the last word and suddenly blinked at her. "Don't you think we should cultivate some chemistry?" Mu Shi, who was standing at the side, finally reacted. Seeing this scene, her eyes twitched hard. No matter how one looked at this scene, why did it seem like Hua Jin was flirting with Shirshir? Could it be? Was Hua Jin interested in her Shirshir? However, at this moment, Mu Shi was completely immersed in Hua Jin's beautiful side profile and had no time to care about anything else. Yun Shirshir laughed dryly. "Develop tacit understanding? I don't know what you're talking about. But, can you not stick so close to me?" "Close?" Hua Jin didn't think so. "Is it close? Men and women don't know what they're doing. It's best if we keep our distance." However, Hua Jin felt that her answer was very cute. "This distance isn't considered close." He lowered his head slightly and whispered into her ear, "Little fool, between men and women, only negative distance is considered close." Negative distance? Yun Shirshir was confused and didn't even think of the evil side. Hua Jin felt that her reaction was very interesting. How could there be such an innocent woman in the entertainment industry? She was so silly that it was cute. Looking at his meaningful smile, Yun Shirshir realized what he meant by negative distance. She suddenly stretched out her hands and pushed him away. "Jerk, do you think it's fun to tease me like this?" With that, Yun Shishir glared at him fiercely and walked around him. Hua Jin pursed his lips and covered his mouth to hide his laughter. He was as mischievous as a lazy kitten that had secretly eaten meat. He relentlessly chased after her and followed behind her. A strand of his handsome hair hung by his ear, making his skin seem even fairer than snow. Chapter 1609. Hua Jin's voice was as gentle as a clear spring, youthful and magnetic. He was very close to her. No matter how Yun Shishir tried to avoid him, he would still come up to her and stick to her side. She came back to her senses abruptly and followed him. There were many supporting roles and extras on the set. Among them, many were Hua Jin's fans. Lethal Beauty was recruiting extras for the sake of Hua Jin being the male lead. Many of them did not want to be paid to join the cast, all for the sake of being able to catch a glimpse of the most handsome man in ancient costume from the nearest distance. Hence, when Yun Shishir and Hua Jin walked one after another, many people cast strange and passionate gazes at them. Yun Shishir was very sensitive. When she realized that there were many piercing gazes on her, she became even more annoyed with Hua Jin. She originally admired Hua Jin's costume. However, this handsome man who looked noble and otherworldly was actually like this in private. He seemed to like to be ambiguous. Yun Shishir frowned. Her footsteps quickened as she walked to her seat and sat down. Hua Jin immediately dragged a small stool over and sat opposite her. How old are you? Yun Shishir flipped open the script and ignored him. Her indifference did not make him retreat. Instead, Hua Jin's eyes were filled with interest. Shishir, pay attention to me. Yun Shishir looked up and glared at him with a distant gaze. Shishir is not for you to call me that. Hua Jin, please keep a distance from me. Hua Jin's eyes lit up when he heard this. He smiled slightly. Shishir, you're finally talking to me. Why do you want me to keep a distance from you, though? He lazily propped his chin with both hands, his beautiful eyes smiling. I don't want to keep a distance from the person I like. Hua Jin, you haven't started filming yet. Yun Shishir suppressed her anger and turned around, not wanting to talk to him. Go away and don't bother me. Shishir, you're so cold to me. Hua Jin leaned forward slightly. Looking at your **** appearance, are you even 20 years old? She passed a blanket to Shishir from the side and said with a smile, Shishir is already 24. Seeing that she had been betrayed, Yun Shishir turned pale with fright. She raised her head abruptly and glared at her assistant. She knew that she had misspoken and bit her lower lip in frustration. Hua Jin's eyes widened slightly when he heard this. 24 years old. Then, she was about to reject him when he sweetly called out, Sister. This man. Yun Shishir sucked in a deep breath of cold air. She could not hold it in any longer. Ever since she joined the production team, she had always kept her manager's words in mind to keep a distance from Hua Jin. She did not know what kind of demon was in this man's mind, but whenever he saw her, he would stare at her with an unfathomable gaze. Now, he even took the initiative to tease her. She could not chase him away. Did he not know how to read people's expressions? Couldn't he tell that she was annoyed with him? The moment the other supporting actresses saw Hua Jin, they surrounded him with adoration. Hua Jin's beauty could move anyone's heart. Hence, many people on the set wanted to strike up a conversation with Hua Jin. However, Hua Jin seemed to be aloof to everyone, so they knew that they were not interested. Now, they saw Hua Jin taking the initiative to chat with Yun Shishir, but Yun Shishir ignored him. Chapter 1610. Therefore, they mustered their courage and walked forward, surrounding Hua Jin and Yun Shishir in the middle, trying to blend in with them. Hua Jin, you look so beautiful in ancient costume. Hua Jin, I'm your little fan. I've been following you since you debuted. The supporting actresses blushed and clenched their fists, clearly nervous. Just as they were eagerly anticipating his reply, he merely propped his chin on his hand and gazed at Yun Shishir's face with a wide smile. It was as if he had not heard their attempts to strike up a conversation with him. Instead, he persistently asked, Sister, why are you ignoring me? Yun Shishir couldn't take it anymore. Hey! Who's your sister? Hua Jin's beautiful eyes lit up. You're my sister, Xianxia. Stop fooling around, okay? Xianxia looked like she was about to break down. I'm very busy, I have to memorize my lines. Today's filming is a scene between you and me, we can practice our lines. Xianxia frowned, but heartlessly rejected, no. When Xianxia was about to flare up, she suddenly looked up and said in a slightly heavier tone, Hey, Hua Jin, you're so annoying. I'm busy memorizing my lines, can you stop bothering me? Hua Jin was stunned, then an extremely hurt expression appeared on her face. She looked pitiful, and her peach blossom eyes turned slightly red. The supporting actresses were originally immersed in the awkwardness of Hua Jin ignoring them, but when they saw Hua Jin being wronged and helpless, they immediately felt pity for her and accused her with righteous indignation. Hey, Xianxia, don't go overboard. Why are you bullying Hua Jin like this? Exactly. Big brother Hua Jin was kind enough to help you rehearse your lines. It's fine if you don't appreciate it, but you're being so aggressive and bullying big brother Hua Jin. What's the meaning of this? Don't you know that even though she's a newcomer who just debuted, her background is much better than ours? So now, she knows how to act like a big shot? Hua Jin didn't put on any airs and kindly wanted to practice with her, but she pretended to be reserved and embarrassed Hua Jin in front of everyone. That's too much. Mocking voices rose one after another. She could not take it anymore. With her hands on her hips, she defended, Hey, what are you doing? What does it have to do with you? You don't have to worry about Xianxia. Have you memorized your lines? Are you familiar with the positioning? If you're so free, then wait for one more shot if you're so capable. Don't need. Xianxia pressed the back of her hand. That's enough. Pausing for a moment, she turned around and looked at the cold faces around her. She sneered, My background is none of your concern. If you have the time, you should worry more about yourself, all right? Everyone was stunned. They gritted their teeth and were about to retort when they heard Xianxia say, Can you not block me? Hey. Hua Jin suddenly spoke. Seeing him speak, a supporting female character immediately said agitatedly, Hua Jin, don't lower yourself to her level. She thinks she's a big shot and doesn't care about you at all. Hua Jin impatiently cut her off. What does it have to do with you? Supporting female character, Hua Jin's face suddenly darkened. I like her personality. This has nothing to do with you guys. Get lost. Chapter 1611. She had lost all her face, so those who knew what was good for them dispersed. At last, those female supporting characters, who were jealous, did not forget to glare fiercely at Xianxia. Xianxia's eyes twitched hard. This Hua Jin, if placed in ancient times, would be a femme fatale. Hua Jin said, Xianxia, don't be afraid. With me around, no one can bully you. I don't need you to speak for me. Wasn't it all because of him that she was being ganged up on? This man was really a femme fatale. Qin Zhou was indeed right. She should indeed keep a distance from him. She said that he had a formidable sugar daddy behind him. Xianxia was even more vigilant now. Not to mention that mysterious sugar daddy, those fans of his in the production team were people she could not afford to offend. Hence, she said, just don't bother me, okay? I just like you. Xianxia could not take it anymore. Even if she could not afford to offend him, could she not avoid him? Hence, she stood up abruptly. Hua Jin followed suit and asked with a smile, Where are you going? Don't follow me. Hey. Hua Jin hurriedly reached out to hold her hand when he saw her walking quickly. Xianxia's body trembled as if she had been scalded by fire. She flung his hand away violently. She turned around angrily and glared at him, only to see that he still had that playful and mischievous expression on his face. She looked around angrily and saw that not many people were paying attention to them. She calmed down and asked with gritted teeth, What is your purpose? Motive? Hua Jin tilted his head and pondered for a moment. His lips suddenly curled into a mischievous smile as he leaned closer to her. His ambiguous breath brushed against her cheek. Is wanting to sleep with you considered my motive? With a loud bang, Yun Shishir's head seemed to explode. What did he mean? She looked at him in disbelief, only to see that his expression was half joking and half serious. She couldn't tell from his tone whether he was serious or joking. But this wasn't a joke, was it? Yun Shishir widened her eyes in shock. You, she suddenly stretched out her hand and pushed hard. Hua Jin was caught off guard and was pushed to the ground. The ground was made of cement. Hua Jin fell to the ground, and a layer of skin was slightly scratched on his palm. He frowned in pain, but his brows were knitted in an innocent arc. She was as beautiful as a painting. Even when she was frowning, she was still breathtakingly beautiful. This sudden scene attracted everyone's attention. Gu Xiaoyang turned around and saw this scene. He frowned slightly. He put aside the matter at hand and walked over. What happened? Yun Shishir was stunned for a moment. She had lost her mind in a fit of anger and did not expect to have such a strong hand. For a moment, she did not know how to answer. Director Gu, what happened? Nothing. Hua Jin got up from the ground, brushed off the dust on his body and smiled lightly. I was just fooling around with Shishir. Gu Xiaoyang glanced at him with a sullen expression. The corners of his mouth moved slightly, as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he did not say anything. As if he had suppressed some anger, he took a deep breath and said with a frown, "Don't play around on the set. There are equipment everywhere. Be careful not to break it and delay the filming process." Yun Shishir was a little surprised. Chapter 16:12. Gu Xiaoyang wanted to protect her, so he warned Hua Jin not to cause any more trouble. Hua Jin glanced at Yun Shishir and then at Gu Xiaoyang before pursing his lips. Got it. Director Gu. Go and get ready. Your scene with Yun Shishir is about to start. Gu Xiaoyang instructed. Hua Jin reluctantly hummed an "oh" and nodded. However, the moment Gu Xiaoyang turned around, he suddenly leaned forward and planted a kiss on Yun Shishir's cheek. Yun Shishir did not react in time and widened her eyes in shock. By the time she came back to her senses, Hua Jin had already returned to his assistant's side to revise the script. She was angry and frustrated, thinking that Hua Jin was simply unreasonable. He actually stole a kiss from me. Why is this Hua Jin so annoying? Gu Xiaoyang happened to see this scene as well. His lips moved, but he did not say anything. He only reminded Yun Shishir to get ready for her role and then went back to work. It seemed that this Hua Jin was not simple. Even the bad-tempered director Gu did not dare to lose his temper in front of him. It seemed that he had a strong backing. Did he do whatever he wanted on set just because he had a sugar daddy's favor? Yun Shishir trembled in anger. Beside her, she looked at her with envy. She clenched her little fists and gritted her teeth in jealousy. Shishir, you have good luck with men. Hua Jin took the initiative to kiss you. I'm so envious of you. Yun Shishir glared at her weakly. Seeing that she was really angry, she felt guilty and quickly explained, Shishir, don't be angry. I was just joking, don't take it seriously. This joke isn't funny at all. Yun Shishir lost her usual calmness. For the first time in her life, she showed anger in front of Shi. Knowing that she was really trying her best, the assistant hurriedly apologized. I'm sorry. I didn't care about the occasion and made a joke. I'm sorry, I won't do it again. Yun Shishir looked in the direction of Hua Jin with a complicated expression. Then, she took out a soft towel from her sleeve and fiercely wiped the place where Hua Jin had just kissed. The next scene officially began filming. Yun Shishir tried her best to immerse herself in her character. However, when it came to her scene with Hua Jin, just standing in front of him and thinking about how he had teased her earlier, she couldn't help but feel angry. He didn't manage to pass a few of them. His eyes, emotions, and the tone of his lines were all wrong. It should have been an expression of incomparable adoration, but the camera caught a trace of annoyance in her eyes. Because of this, Gu Xiaoyang completely lost his temper and scolded Yun Shishir in front of everyone. Lin Ji finished her makeup and rushed to the set. When she saw Yun Shishir in a sorry state, she was secretly delighted. Serves her right. Seeing Yun Shishir being scolded so harshly, she openly mocked her. Yun Shishir felt aggrieved. In the end, Gu Xiaoyang lost his patience and stopped filming for this scene. He waved his hand and said, "You're not even in the right mood. Why are you wasting my time? Everyone's time is precious. You spent so much energy on the script, and in the end, you acted like this. Who are you trying to fool?" With that, he waved his hand and dismissed Yun Shishir. Yun Shishir felt that her condition had been ruined, so she asked for leave from the director and went back. This Hua Jin is really despicable. Chapter 16:13. Damn it, if it wasn't for him, she would have been able to perform well. Yun Shishir was so angry that when she returned to the hotel, she was still a little depressed. She was a perfectionist. When she was filming, she hoped to get the director's approval. She had worked so hard, but because of Hua Jin, all her preparations had gone down the drain. Yun Shishir changed into her casual clothes and sat on the bed. Her anger had yet to subside. The doorbell suddenly rang. She frowned, got up and walked to the door. Through the peephole, she saw a man in a suit standing at the door. His posture was elegant and respectful. Standing behind him were two elegantly dressed women. They were holding a set of things in their hands. Through the peephole, she couldn't see clearly. Yun Shishir asked warily, "Who is it?" The man replied, "Miss Yun, please open the door. I was sent by Chairman Mu to bring you to a place." Yun Shishir hesitated for a moment. Seeing that this man didn't look like a dangerous person, she opened the door. Just as she opened the door, the man saw her and bowed in a gentlemanly manner. "Good afternoon, Your Highness the Princess. May I know if it's convenient to go in now?" Yun Shishir was confused by his strange way of addressing her. However, she still nodded and said, "It's convenient." The man smiled and signaled with his eyes. The two women walked into the room politely, but the man didn't come in. After closing the door, Yun Shishir looked at them strangely and asked suspiciously, "You were sent by Mu Yaja too?" "Yes, Your Royal Highness." Yun Shishir was confused by their way of addressing her. She smiled awkwardly and didn't know what to say. "What Royal Highness?" "Your Royal Highness, please change into a dress first." One of the women carried a gown and greeted her with a perfect smile. Yun Shishir frowned. She didn't know what this Mu Yaja was up to. Why did he want her to change into a dress for no reason? Was he bringing her to a banquet? If that was the case, why didn't he inform her in advance? As a result, she was caught off guard. She glanced at the gown. When the gown was unfolded, Yun Shishir was shocked. What a beautiful dress! The champagne-colored gown had a skirt that reached the ground. The design of the flat-shouldered gown seemed to have been tailor-made for her, revealing her jade-like collarbone and graceful neck. The chest area was adorned with a few pink roses that extended from the waistline all the way to the hem of the skirt. The flower adornment was beautiful and flawless. The petals were especially lifelike, almost to the point of passing them off as genuine. If one did not examine them carefully, one would not be able to tell that the petals on the dress were fake. "Your Highness, please change into your formal attire." Yun Shishir hesitated for a moment, then nodded. After changing into the gown in the bedroom, she walked in front of the full-length mirror. She was like a flower fairy standing in the mirror, refined and beautiful. The two women went up to her and helped her to the dressing mirror. One was in charge of her hair, and the other was in charge of her makeup. An hour later, she was dressed up like a princess from a fairy tale, noble and elegant. Yun Shishir looked at herself in the mirror. The person in the mirror really looked like a princess from a fairy tale movie. But this dreamy crystal makeup was not suitable for a banquet. Chapter 16:14. Through the window, the scenery of the street flashed by quickly. She didn't know where the car was taking her. She was in a daze the entire way. When she got out of the carriage, the sky was getting dark and the night was beautiful. When she lifted the hem of her dress and got out of the car, the scene in front of her shocked her greatly. The carriage stopped at the entrance of Fairy Tale Valley. Fairy Tale Valley, a theme park that looked like a fairy tale wonderland. Yun Shishir had brought Yu here before, so she had a deep impression of Fairy Tale Valley. Fairy Tale Valley was closed for a period of time because of the shooting incident. After some repairs, it was put back into operation. However, at this moment, The fairy tale valley in front of her eyes was completely different from the one she remembered. The night was getting late, and the moonlight was like silver in the starry sky. Under the illumination of the starry sky, the iconic castle of Fairy Tale Valley stood in the distance between the canyons. It was resplendent and majestic, just like a medieval European royal castle. It was retro and luxurious, and it was magnificent as the lights constantly changed colors. The huge Fairy Tale Valley was surrounded by a classical and romantic atmosphere. There was a crystal carriage parked at the entrance. The attendant stood beside the white horse respectfully and gently welcomed her. "Your Highness, beautiful princess, please get on the carriage." Xianxia was slightly stunned when she saw the hand reaching out to her. Her brain stopped working for a few seconds before she reached out and allowed the attendant to welcome her into the crystal carriage. What's going on? Xianxia sat in the carriage, her thoughts still in a mess. Everything happened too suddenly. She was still in a daze and didn't know what was going on. The crystal carriage passed through the garden path that was covered with pink rose petals. Xianxia was stunned, but she was stunned by the dreamy scene in front of her. She couldn't help but lean against the window and enjoy the fragrant breeze. So beautiful. So dreamy. It was really like a dream. The breeze blew, and the petals on the ground were swept up, invading her face. Xianxia brushed her face with her fingertips and gently rubbed the petals on her face. She sniffed lightly, and the fragrance assailed her nose. On the road, there were many tourists coming and going. When the crowd saw the crystal carriage approaching, they all widened their eyes in amazement. They looked at Xianxia, who was sitting on the crystal carriage, with jealousy. Some of the young girls couldn't help but chase after the carriage as they were pleasantly surprised. "Wow, it's a crystal carriage. I've only seen this kind of carriage in fairy tale movies. It was a real crystal carriage, so beautiful. I want to sit down too. The woman in the carriage is so beautiful, like a princess. She looks like a flower fairy. There are so many flower petals on her body, how mesmerizing. This woman looks a little familiar. I feel like I've seen her somewhere before." When Xianxia heard this, she was so shocked that she retracted her head back into the carriage. The crystal carriage slowly passed through the romantic garden arch, and a huge Ferris wheel came into view. Under the background of the bright starry sky, the huge Ferris wheel slowly rotated along with the music. The attendants helped Xianxia down from the crystal carriage. In an instant, it was as if several beams of light from the sky were projected onto her body. The beautiful lights surrounded her, so much so that when she stood in the middle of the bright light, it made her surroundings seem dark. Chapter 16:15. For a moment, she couldn't see her surroundings clearly. She took a small step forward, but the light followed her. Xianxia stopped in her tracks and was a little surprised. Just as she was at a loss of what to do, she suddenly saw a tall and slender figure slowly walking towards her from not far away. Xianxia widened her eyes. Standing in the light, she couldn't see clearly. In her curious and surprised gaze, a man in a snow-white suit appeared in front of her like a god. His tall and handsome figure pierced through the light and appeared in front of her. "Moo!" Xianxia's mouth gaped open in shock as she uttered a single word. Mu Yaja's appearance gave her a dreamy surprise. He was dressed in a medieval aristocratic suit. His posture was noble and arrogant, and his aura was extraordinary. He was like a Prince Charming who had appeared in front of her without warning. She had imagined countless dreamy scenes, but now they were displayed in front of her without warning. She couldn't come back to her senses for a long time. Xianxia stared at the handsome man in front of her in a daze. She was a little speechless. Did he prepare everything in this fairy tale-like fantasy for her? Xianxia's body stiffened slightly. In front of her, the strong light left a deep impression on his exquisite facial features. In the dreamy light and shadow, his handsome face was like an ancient Greek sculpture, handsome as if it was cast. Amidst the gentle breeze, his black hair brushed past his ears, his proud jawline, and his deep, serene eyes were breathtaking. His thin lips gently curved into a charming arc. Mu Yaja gently reached out to her and opened his palm. He raised his eyebrows slightly and gave her a silent invitation with his eyes. She raised her hand and placed it in his palm. Suddenly, her breathing became tight. Yun Shirshir couldn't believe that everything in front of her was real. So much so that she asked a silly question at this romantic moment. Mu Yaja, she looked up and her eyes flashed. Is it really you? What answered her was the man's powerful palm. He held her hand and took the opportunity to pull her into his embrace. Yun Shirshir was caught off guard and fell into his embrace. Her swaying body was supported by his strong arms. She raised her head and looked into the man's deep and doting eyes. Little fool, it's me. Little fool, it's me. This intimate and affectionate form of address made her slightly startled. Just a few hours ago, Hua Jin had called her that. She felt impatient and didn't like him calling her that. However, when Mu Yaja called her little idiot, it actually made her feel a trace of warmth and sweetness in her heart. Yun Shirshir still couldn't believe everything in front of her eyes. She was afraid that in the blink of an eye, she would wake up from her dream. When she woke up, she would still be on set, sitting in a deserted hotel. She couldn't help but stretch out her arm and gently wrap it around his waist, greedily longing for this moment. Behind them, the Ferris wheel stopped. Mu Yaja grabbed her chin and dotted her lips. He asked gently, "Do you like the Ferris wheel?" Yun Shirshir nodded and pursed her lips into a smile. "I like it. Do you want to sit?" "Yes." Mu Yaja smiled and held her hand as they boarded the Ferris wheel. There were only two of them on the huge Ferris wheel. Chapter 1616. As the Ferris wheel slowly rose into the air, the spectacular scenery of Fairy Tale Valley could be seen. The two of them sat in the spacious cabin, and Yun Shirshir looked very surprised. "Mu Yaja, did you prepare all these?" Mu Yaja saw her childlike expression and couldn't help but laugh. "Is this your first time?" "Yes." Yun Shirshir's expression changed slightly, and she looked a little lonely. She pursed her lips dejectedly. "This is my first time. I've never had the chance to sit here before. It's rare to come to a place like an amusement park." He leaned back gracefully. "Do you like it?" Yun Shirshir smiled in satisfaction. "I like it. I really like it." In the hearts of young girls, there was always a princess dream. They dreamed of becoming the prince in their hearts, Cinderella. Yun Shirshir was no exception. But fairy tales were fairy tales, and dreams were just dreams. That crystal carriage is really beautiful, just like in fairy tales. Have you seen Cinderella before? No, the carriage in Cinderella is a carriage made from a pumpkin by the fairy godmother. Mu Yaja merely watched her gesticulate excitedly without saying a word. Yun Shirshir said longingly, "When I was young, I also dreamed that when night fell and the Ferris wheel rose to the peak, I would be able to see the beautiful starry sky with my beloved prince." She was too embarrassed to say what she wanted to say next. When the Ferris wheel rose to the sky, fireworks would be dazzling in the starry sky, and the prince would take out a beautiful diamond ring, propose to her, and kiss her in the beautiful night. She only hid these beautiful fantasies in her diary. She smiled embarrassedly. "This dream must be very silly, right?" "I think so too." Mu Yaja's lips curled into a smile as he lowered his head to light a cigarette. Holding the cigarette between his lips and smiling eyes, he actually made her heart palpitate with excitement. Yun Shirshir's cheeks burned strangely. She turned her face away guiltily, but secretly glanced at him from the corner of her eyes. Usually he liked to wear black shirts, but today he was wearing a noble suit and looked very handsome. So much so that she was embarrassed to look him in the eye. Mu Yaja leaned back in his seat. His fair and flawless skin, his gentle gaze, and his thick and long eyelashes intertwined with each other. There was a faint dimple at the corner of his lips. When he smiled, it was very beautiful, revealing a trace of freshness and purity. It was the complete opposite of his expressionless face, making people involuntarily want to get close to him. She didn't know why, but she didn't like men who smoked, yet she didn't dislike him. She was even a little obsessed with how he looked when he smoked. Yun Shirshir stared blankly and couldn't help but curve her lips. Mu Yaja suddenly raised his eyes and looked at her calmly. Yun Shirshir was startled. She turned her head abruptly, only to find that the Ferris wheel had already risen to the highest point. She stood up excitedly and leaned against the windowsill. She looked up at the starry sky and held her face in her hands in amazement. It's so beautiful. Yun Shirshir smiled happily like a child. Mu Yaja took a deep puff of his cigarette and put it out. He got up casually and slowly approached her from behind. Aware of the movement behind her, Yun Shirshir smiled and turned her face. Suddenly, her chin was gently lifted by slender fingers. Chapter 16-17. Mu Yaja's perfect, handsome face inched closer to hers. His thin, moist lips gently covered the corner of her lips. The faint smell of tobacco permeated between his lips and teeth. Together with his unique fragrance, it refreshed her heart and mind. Yun Shirshir was stunned. Her eyes suddenly widened and she furrowed her brows in disbelief. Mu Yaja covered her eyes in dissatisfaction and gently lowered his eyelids. She tossed and turned in his soft kiss. His deep affection for her, which seeped into her bones, made her heart pound like thunder for a moment. Outside the window, the moonlight flowed gently and the mottled shadows of the stars contrasted with the white light. His face seemed to be plated with a layer of moonlight, making his skin look even more jade-like. Through the gaps between her fingers, Yun Shirshir carefully opened her eyes. Mu Yaja's beautiful face was faintly discernible. The Ferris wheel slowly rotated, and she slowly closed her eyes. Mu Yaja imprisoned her in front of his chest. He lifted her chin with one hand and stroked the soft hair by the side of her face with the other. The tip of his tongue gently hooked into the gap between her lips and her pearly white teeth. The tips of their tongues seemed to touch each other. Yun Shirshir's cheeks suddenly flushed red and her hands moved restlessly in front of his chest. She seemed to be a little nervous. She suddenly felt the scene in front of her was extremely familiar. Where had she seen it before? Yun Shirshir was a little confused, but she couldn't pinpoint what was wrong. Mu Yaja comfortingly grabbed her wrist and slowly moved it to his waist. Thus, she obediently wrapped her arms around his waist. Their fingers interlocked, but her knuckles were white from nervousness. A bunch of fireworks suddenly rose in the sky and bloomed beautifully. Mu Yaja lifted his head. Yun Shirshir lowered her head shyly and bit her lip hard. He smiled and lifted her chin, giving her a light peck on the lips. Shirshir, marry me, Mu Yaja's voice was slightly deep as he slowly said those words. He raised his eyebrows and gazed at her face gently. Shirshir, marry me. Those words sounded so pleasant when he said them in such a mellow and magnetic voice. His large palm grabbed her hand. Immediately after, a circle of coldness stuck to her ring finger and slid down to the base of her finger. Yun Shirshir's heart seemed to have skipped a beat and her eyes kept widening. His sudden proposal caught her off guard. So much so that after Mu Yaja said that sentence, her mind seemed to explode violently. White light flashed and it was as if she was flying to the clouds. Happiness came too suddenly. Caught off guard, she was stunned by the surprise that fell from the sky. Marry me, okay? Mu Yaja's devilish lips curled into a doting smile. Let's be together forever, okay? Sure. He stopped her from continuing. Let me finish. She pursed her lips and held her breath, wondering what he was going to say next. I swear. Mu Yaja took a deep breath and lowered his head. He touched the tip of her nose and rubbed it intimately. When he opened his eyes again, his gaze was deep. I'll use my life to dote on you and protect you. Yun Shirshir's red lips trembled slightly. She could not help but feel like crying because of him. I'll dote on you forever. Are you willing to be my little princess forever? Behind him, a bunch of fireworks rose and bloomed beautifully in the sky. Mu Yaja held her hand gracefully. Yun Shirshir's gaze fell on her ring finger. Chapter 16-18. It was a 1-carat pink diamond ring, exquisite and luxurious. Yun Shirshir recognized it at a glance. This was a rare custom-made pink diamond from Dairy Ring. Dairy Ring was a romantic luxury brand. Men could only customize one diamond ring in their lifetime based on their ID card. A man could only customize one diamond ring in his lifetime. It symbolized the most romantic promise. The ring he put on for her was from the Dairy Ring With You series. It was worth 8 figures. Yun Shirshir's eyes suddenly moistened. She was touched, But at the same time, she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. How could this man be so domineering in his proposal? He put the ring on her ring finger without any explanation. It was obvious that he wouldn't allow her to refuse. She could feel that in his eyes, she had really become a little princess who was doted on by thousands. She really couldn't believe everything that was happening in front of her eyes. It should have only appeared in her diary, everything that was in her fantasy. Getting on the Ferris wheel with the person she loved, proposing to her in the sky full of fireworks, begging her to marry him. This was clearly a beautiful fairy tale plot, but it actually appeared in her life. Wuxia saw that she was so touched and happy that she lost control. His heart ached a little, but in an instant, it softened beyond belief. Sure, promise me. Wuxia cupped her face, his gaze sincere. He wasn't a man who understood romance. Therefore, perhaps tonight's romantic proposal was the most romantic proposal he could imagine. In business, he had always been cold, decisive, and wise. However, he had always been lacking in romance cells. Therefore, perhaps in her eyes, even a proposal seemed so domineering that she couldn't refuse. However, he really wanted to protect her for the rest of her life. He had prepared for this proposal for a long time. Everything was done by him personally, all for the sake of giving her a dreamy surprise on this day. Perhaps in the past, he also couldn't believe that he would secretly spend so much effort for a woman, just for a proposal. As long as he waved his hand, there probably wouldn't be a woman who would refuse his proposal. In the past, marriage to him was nothing more than a ritual and a shackle. But now, because of her, he had changed his view of marriage. If he had to say that marriage was a shackle, then he was willing to be trapped. Trapped by her? Xianxia was crying and laughing at the same time. She nodded and agreed, Okay. Idiot. Xianxia didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What I mean is, I'm willing. He had formally proposed to her, and she was willing to marry him. She was willing, she was willing, she was really willing. These words kept repeating in Xianxia's mind, and her mood also climbed to the clouds along with the gorgeous fireworks in the night sky. When Wuxia heard this, a satisfied smile bloomed on his face. He hugged her in his arms and kissed her passionately under the fireworks in the sky. The Ferris wheel climbed to the highest point. Xianxia nestled in Wuxia's arms and looked at the beautiful night sky outside the window. She couldn't help hugging her arms tighter. Do you know? Right now, I feel like I'm in a dream. Until now, I still can't believe it. Chapter 1619. When I was young, I yearned for the princes and princesses in fairy tales. I fantasized that one day, I would sit on a Ferris wheel with my beloved, and he would propose to me with fireworks in the sky. Halfway through her speech, she suddenly felt that something was amiss. Xianxia furrowed her brows and glared at him. Did you peek at my diary? Wuxia's face showed a hint of awkwardness at being exposed. Seeing his evasive expression, Xianxia cupped his face with both hands, forcing him to look at her directly. Tell me the truth. Did you secretly flip through my diary? She had the habit of keeping a diary when she was young. Hence, be it her mood, her ideals, her thoughts, or even her trivial matters, she liked to record them in her diary. Xianxia felt that something was amiss no matter how she thought about it. Today's proposal was similar to the one she had imagined in her diary. Could it be that this man had secretly peeked at her diary and directed this scene? Wuxia coughed awkwardly and then hummed in acknowledgement. He had indeed secretly flipped through her diary, but that was because you had accidentally left it behind when she was tidying up her things. He did not know that it was a diary, so he picked it up and flipped through a few pages until he reached one of them. On top of it were the notes of Xianxia when she was young. He skimmed through it and memorized her wish in just a few glances. Wuxia told her everything truthfully. Xianxia did not show it on her face when she heard it, but she was very touched inside. Wuxia, she lowered her head and hesitated for a moment before smiling. Thank you. She had to thank him for silently fulfilling a wish of hers that she could only dream of. The Ferris wheel descended. When the door opened, fireworks rose from the ground. Yun Tianyu and Xiao Yichen appeared before her like two little angels, holding birthday cakes in their hands. "Mommy, happy birthday." The two children's tender voices were pure and cute. Xianxia was pleasantly surprised once again. So much so that she stared blankly at the scene in front of her, unable to react in time. So today was her birthday? She didn't realize it, but she didn't expect the two little guys to remember her birthday. They even prepared a cake and a gift in advance. There was such a big surprise. Xianxia was so moved that tears gushed out of her eyes. She had been on set for so long and had been separated from the two little guys for so long. She missed them very much. Xianxia lowered her body slightly and opened her arms. "My two darlings, Mommy missed you so much." "Mommy?" Little Ichin let out a whimper as tears welled up in his eyes as he threw himself into her embrace. Yu couldn't help but laugh. He pursed his lips and walked to Xianxia's side a little bashfully. He put the crown he made on her head. "Dear Mommy, happy birthday. I hope you will be happy forever. Yu will love you forever." He cupped her face and kissed her affectionately on the cheek. Xianxia was touched and pulled him into her embrace. She hugged the two little lads tightly, unwilling to let go. "Mommy missed you guys so much." Xiao Yichin heard that and a few drops of tears fell. "Mommy, why didn't you come home for so long? I missed you so much." Chapter 16:20. "Mommy, even if you know you're wrong, I won't forgive you so easily." Xiao Yichin pretended to be reserved as he counted with his fingers. Xianxia pursed her lips and asked teasingly, "Then, Xiao Yichin, what do I have to do to make you forgive Mommy?" "Unless." Xiao Yichin blinked mysteriously, tapped his cheek, and smiled. "Mommy, give me a kiss." Xianxia was amused by him. Then she kissed him hard on the cheek. Xiao Yichin was satisfied. Then he took out the handmade gift that he had hidden behind his back and held it in front of her. It was a bouquet of handmade roses. Xiao Yichin had specially asked a handmade teacher to make it for him. He thought that since it was his mommy's birthday, he had to give her a happy present. After much thought, he decided to give her a bouquet of handmade roses. Handmade flowers would never wither. The meaning behind the bouquet was that he hoped his mommy would be like a beautiful flower that would bloom forever. Xianxia held the bouquet in her hands. Her heart was filled with warmth. Xiao Yichin's handwork skills were not as good as Yu's. He was a little clumsy. When he was in school, he did not like to do handwork. Hence, the handmade flowers were a little rough. However, it was obvious that he had put a lot of effort into it. Every edge was carefully trimmed and neat. The coloring was also very serious. Although there were not enough details, the overall product was very beautiful. Xianxia loved it very much. She looked at the flowers with a smile on her face. She felt a sense of satisfaction that she had never felt before. Xiao Yichin asked nervously, "Mommy? Mommy, do you like the flowers I made?" "Of course I like them. Mommy really likes the gift you gave me." "Really?" Xiao Yichin was instantly elated. He was so proud that he wanted to fly to the clouds. Mommy had praised his handwork. Mommy liked the flowers he made. His little tail was about to curl up into the sky. Xianxia's affirmation was better than anyone else's praise. Mu Yaja's eyes twitched as he watched from the side. On the way there, he praised Xiao Yichin and said that his handiwork had improved, but Xiao Yichin was still unhappy. Xianxia's praise actually made him so proud. Unfair. Yu was jealous. She quickly grabbed Xianxia's arm and walked over to the cake. Then she said proudly, "Mommy, this is Yu's birthday cake." As he spoke, he snorted and glanced at Xiao Yichin provocatively. The latter crossed his arms in front of his chest unhappily. Clearly, he didn't think much of it. His eyes seemed to say, "Mommy would definitely like the flowers I sent her." Yu replied with a cold stare, naive. "Mommy would definitely like the cake I made the most." Xianxia walked over to the cake and saw that Yu had meticulously kneaded sugar figurines. Mu Yaja, Xianxia, Yu, and Xiao Yichin's family of 4 were used as the template. The figurines were pink and sticky, cute and charming. Xiao Yichin's and Xianxia's facial features were especially lively. However, Xianxia's gaze landed on Mu Yaja's face. She burst out laughing. Not only was Mu Yaja's face fiercely pinched by Yu, but his mouth was also tilted to one side due to the accident when he was making the cake. Haha. The expression of the sugar figurines was so funny that Xianxia couldn't help but burst out laughing. Mu Yaja walked over and took a look. His face darkened and he rubbed his forehead with a headache. Chapter 1621. Daddy, you really can't blame me for this. Yu explained innocently, who asked Daddy to suddenly appear behind him when he was concentrating on making the cake, giving him a big fright. He was so frightened that he inadvertently drew his mouth crooked. Xianxia laughed until tears rolled down her cheeks. Mu Yaja's sugar figurine's expression was so creepy that she couldn't stop laughing. Idiot, stop laughing. Mu Yaja felt a little embarrassed. The other 3 sugar figurines were so cute, but his sugar figurine had a fierce and dry expression. Most importantly, its mouth was crooked to one side. It was unbelievably ugly. He felt a little wronged. When he saw Xianxia laughing again, he had the urge to hide the sugar figurine. However, he couldn't. Yu had painstakingly made this cake for her. Otherwise, he would have destroyed it long ago. Seeing that his mother was amused, Yu was also infected by her happy and joyful mood. His lips could not help but curl into a smile, and he actually laughed along with her. Xianxia had secretly taken a look at the cake and Mu Yaja's ugly but cute sugar figurine. He had already laughed along the way. However, now that Xianxia and Yu were laughing, he couldn't help but laugh too. The 3 of them laughed together. Mu Yaja's expression darkened. He glared at Yu warningly. Yu understood. He cleared his throat and coughed. He immediately stopped laughing and said to Xianxia, "Mommy, don't laugh anymore. Let's blow out the candles, okay?" But Yu immediately took out the digital candles and stuck them on the cake. Then he lit the candles with a match. The flames flickered, illuminating the faces of the 4 people. Xianxia, let's sing a happy birthday song to Mommy together. Xianxia immediately reacted and clapped his hands. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to my dear Mommy. Happy birthday to you. Yu said excitedly, Mommy, hurry up and make a wish. Xianxia immediately clasped her hands together and closed her eyes sincerely. She smiled and silently made a wish. Then she blew out the candles. Phew, wow. That's awesome. Little Ichin jumped up and down in excitement, his saliva almost flowing out of his mouth uncontrollably. Suddenly, he curiously tugged at his mother's sleeve and probed, Mommy, what birthday wish did you make? Yu gave him a hard knock on the head. You big idiot. Wishes won't come true if you say them out loud. Oh, I see. Xianxia couldn't hide his disappointment. However, when he thought about how he was going to eat the cake, he immediately became happy again. I can finally eat the cake. As he spoke, he greedily reached out his little hand to grab the little sugar figurine on the cake. Yu hit his head again. Idiot. Mommy hasn't cut the cake yet. You're not allowed to eat it. Xianxia groaned and held his forehead in pain. He blinked his big watery eyes sadly and looked at Yu as if he was silently complaining. Yu also stared at him. Xianxia didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Why was it that Xianxia, the younger one, didn't act like an older brother, like Yu? Xianxia was more timid. Chapter 1622. Mommy, hurry up and cut the cake. That way, the birthday ceremony will be complete. This little bun really knew more than she did. Mu Yaja walked forward and held her hand. Xianxia turned around and smiled at him. Then they cut the cake together. The 2 little guys clapped and cheered. Yu, can we eat now? Little Ichin stared at him greedily, his saliva almost dripping from his mouth as he stared at the cake. Yu glanced at him in disdain and said expressionlessly, Please wipe your saliva first. Xianxia was confused. Yu sighed and rubbed his forehead. Stupid brother, why are you so greedy? Because Yu's cake looks so tempting. It must be delicious. Xianxia said honestly. Yu was speechless for a moment. Then, he sighed and took the initiative to cut a piece of cake and passed it to him. You little greedy cat, eat it. I don't want this. I want the sugar figurine on the cake. Yu pondered for a moment and asked curiously, which one do you want? Xiao Yichen was drooling. I want yours. Yu immediately said, no. Why not? Can't you eat yours? Xiao Yichen felt wronged and said, mine doesn't look as good as yours. Stingy Yu, let me eat your sugar figurine. As he spoke, he started to act coquettishly. Yu, on the other hand, stood firm and shook his head vigorously. But, I won't let you eat mine. You stingy. Then I'll eat Mommy's sugar figurine. As he spoke, he reached out his hand and grabbed the cutest sugar figurine that Yu had spent the most effort on. Smith. Yu slapped his outstretched hand away with a look of disdain. But Xiao Yichen said dejectedly, what's wrong now? You can't eat Mommy's either. Why don't you eat Daddy's food? When Xiao Yichen heard this, he felt wronged and mumbled unwillingly, I don't want to eat Daddy's little candy figurine. She's so ugly I can't bear to eat her. Xianxia and Yu burst out laughing at the same time. At the side, Mu Yaja's face was extremely gloomy. There seemed to be cold air around him. Xiao Yichen shuddered violently. When he turned around, he saw Mu Yaja's incomparably frightening expression. He immediately explained earnestly, Daddy, I'm sorry. I'm not saying that you're ugly. I'm saying that the little sugar figurine on the cake is ugly. Don't be angry. Xianxia, Mu Yaja's face darkened even more. Why did this little guy have to explain to him so seriously? Was he born to be a comedian? Yu said, Xiao Yichen, be good and let Mommy choose a candy figurine first. It'll be your turn after that. As he said this, he turned around and said seriously, Mommy, pick a candy figurine and try it. Xianxia said in surprise, Are you talking about the candy figurines standing on the cake? Can it really be eaten? She was still a little surprised. This was the first time she had seen a candy cake. The 4 little candy figurines that Yu had molded were lifelike, lively, and adorable. She did not expect that these candy figurines could be eaten. Lifelike. Except for Mu Yaja's candy figurine. Chapter 1623. Anyway, she didn't want to eat his little sugar figurines. Yu looked at her with disdain. Stupid Mommy, of course you can eat them. These figurines are made with sugar. The insides are filled with sugar and the outside is coated with icing. They're very sweet. However, this is my first time trying to make a sugar cake and I haven't tried it yet. I don't know how it tastes. Mommy, try it first. Xianxia nodded. Then she reached out her hand and picked between the 4 figurines with her fingertips. At that moment, she couldn't decide which one to eat. Although these figurines were made with sugar, they could still break their necks in one bite. Just thinking about it was a little creepy. Yu suddenly asked, Mommy, what flavor do you like? Flavor? Yu blinked and said proudly, yes. I made these 4 figurines with different flavors. There were different flavors of sugar, so there were many flavors to choose from. He purposely chose 4 flavors and made 4 little sugar figurines. Therefore, each of the 4 little sugar figurines had a different flavor and were unique. When Mu Yaja heard this, he looked at him in surprise. This kid was full of tricks. There were actually 4 different flavors of sugar figurines. Xianxia was interested. She pointed at Xiao Yichen and asked, what flavor does Xiao Yichen have? Strawberry. Then what about yours? My little sugar figurines are made with milk flavor. Yu smirked. Mu Yaja asked curiously, then what about mine? Daddy's is made with chocolate. Xiao Yichen was also very interested. He asked greedily, then what about Mommy's? Yu smiled mysteriously. That's a secret. Wow. With Yu's tantalizing words, Xiao Yichen's desire grew. The unknown and the most mysterious were always the most desirable. Xiao Yichen wanted to try the flavor of his mommy's little sugar figurines even more. Xianxia glanced at Xiao Yichen. She saw that he was staring at her little sugar figurines greedily. Therefore, she picked one of Xiao Yichen's little sugar figurines and left hers for the 2 little guys to try. She raised Xiao Yichen's little sugar figurines and waved it in front of him. She pretended to be fierce and said, Xiao Yichen, Mommy is going to start eating you. As she spoke, she deliberately and viciously bit the sugar doll's little hand, forcefully. Little Yichen playfully held his arm and said pitifully, "Oh, Mommy's." His exaggerated and amusing reaction made it seem as if she had bitten him alive. Mu Yaja's lips curled into a smile as he was amused by his son's clown side. Yu said cheekily from the side, "Mommy, bite his head." Yun Shirshir raised her eyebrows and bit Xiao Yichen's head. Xiao Yichen immediately pretended to be in pain and held his head. My head seems to have been bitten by something. It hurts. It hurts, huh? Yun Shirshir couldn't help but laugh. All right, Xiao Yichen, Mommy won't tease you anymore. Then, she took her little sugar figurine from the cake and squatted in front of Xiao Yichen. She handed it to him. Xiao Yichen, Mommy's little sugar figurine is for you, okay? Chapter 1624. Thank you, Mommy. I love Mommy so much. Yu immediately said indignantly, Idiot, why aren't you thanking me? I made the cake. Xiao Yichen smiled. Thank you, Yu. Yu was finally satisfied. Yun Shirshir looked at him lovingly. Xiao Yichen, try Yu's cooking. But Xiao Yichen couldn't wait to take a bite. The poor little sugar figurine was bitten off by him, revealing a cross-section of its head. It was actually rainbow candy paste. Wow. Xiao Yichen's mouth was full as the sweet candy paste filled his mouth. The delicious sweetness filled his mouth, and he was so happy that he wanted to cry. It's so delicious. This is the most delicious cake I've ever eaten. Xiao Yichen was pleasantly surprised. He danced with joy and excitement. Yun Shirshir glanced at it and was also surprised. She didn't expect her little sugar figurine to be made with rainbow candy paste. It had to be mentioned that the candy paste only had one flavor. However, Yu had spent a lot of effort on her sugar figurine. He purposely mixed different flavors together. The purple one was grape, the red one was strawberry, the green one was apple, the orange one was orange, the yellow one was lemon, the red one was coffee, and the blue one was blueberry. The 7 flavors implied that in his heart, his mommy was the most perfect woman in the world. There were a total of 7 flavors. In order to prevent the candy paste from melting and mixing the flavors, he specially used a sugar coating to separate the flavors. He spent about an hour just to make this sugar figurine. From kneading it into shape, to coloring it, and finally to the finished product, he was especially serious. Yun Shirshir was so touched. She knew very well how much time and energy it took to bake. In the past, when she had a personal activity in school, she had also tried to bake. However, she was clumsy and the biscuits she made were all burnt. Just by looking at this beautiful cake, Yun Shirshir could imagine Yu standing on a stool in the kitchen with his head lowered, carefully kneading the cream in his hands, imagining her appearance as he carefully made the cake. A warm current seemed to flow into his heart. Today was really, what a pleasant surprise. This was probably the happiest birthday she had ever had in her life. Yun Shirshir was satisfied. Xiao Yichen raised the candy figurine to Yun Shirshir's lips and said considerately, Mommy, this candy figurine made by Yu is so delicious. You should try it too. Yu was also looking forward to it. Mommy, try it and see how it tastes. Yes. Yun Shirshir nodded and took a bite under the serious gazes of the 2 little munchkins. When the 7-colored candy paste entered her mouth, it instantly overflowed with sweetness, filling her mouth and teeth. The candy paste made by Yu was sweet but not greasy, soft but not sticky. It was just the right amount of sweetness, but it made one want to taste it again. Yun Shirshir had never eaten such a delicious cake and was pleasantly surprised. It's so delicious, she said honestly. Yu, how did you come up with it? I bought a baking book and learned a little from it. After pausing for a moment, Yu said proudly, however, Mommy's candy figurine wasn't learned from the book. I created the rainbow candy paste myself. It's really great. Chapter 1625. When Yu saw this, he was naturally happy. He could tell that his mommy was enjoying the birthday present that he had specially prepared for her. Mommy, is it delicious? It's delicious. Xiao Yichen was the first to reply. Yu glanced at him. Greedy little kitten, I didn't ask you. Xianxia was delighted. She bent down and hugged him. Yu, the cake you made is delicious. Can you make it for Mommy next time? Mommy, you're a greedy little kitten too. Although Yu sounded arrogant, he couldn't hide the joy on his face. He licked his pink lips and asked bashfully, then, Mommy, do you like the birthday present that Yu specially prepared for you? I like it. Xianxia answered without hesitation. When Xianxia heard this, he leaned over and said, Mommy. Then, do you like the birthday present that I made? I like it very much too. Yu and Xianxia looked at each other. The two little guys seemed to be fighting over this. Sparks flew in the air. The two squishy little balls looked at her and asked in unison, then whose present does Mommy like the most? Xianxia was stunned. She looked at the two children blinking their big, watery eyes at her. For a moment, she couldn't make a choice. She liked the presents that the two children had given her a lot. She couldn't tell which one she liked the most. She was very touched. However, the two little lads seemed to be fighting for her attention. They insisted that she pick one. She really couldn't pick one. Suddenly, Xianxia had an idea. She raised her hand and flashed it in front of their eyes. Mommy still likes Daddy's present the most. Yu and Xianxia looked at her hand at the same time. They saw a dazzling diamond on her ring finger. It was Dairy Ring's rare pink diamond. It was extremely eye-catching. Yu had seen this custom-made diamond ring in a magazine. It was worth 8 figures. Pink diamonds were very rare. A 1-carat pink diamond was even more precious. When Xianxia heard this, he immediately looked at Wuxia indignantly. He pouted and said unhappily, so this is what Daddy prepared. How cunning. Yu asked, did Daddy propose to Mommy? Xianxia smiled and nodded. Yu felt an inexplicable bitterness in his heart. He nervously grabbed Xianxia's wrist and asked anxiously, then, what about Mommy? Mommy, did you agree to Daddy's proposal? He had originally thought that his daddy had prepared a huge sum of money for his mommy to book the entire fairy tale valley and prepare a grand and romantic birthday party for his mommy, just like in fairy tales. Who would have thought? The real gift that Daddy had carefully prepared was actually a proposal. For a moment, his feelings were complicated and he didn't know how to describe them. He was happy for his mommy, but he also felt an inexplicable bitterness and melancholy. He had clearly been looking forward to his daddy's proposal for a long time. He had also sincerely hoped that his mommy and daddy would be together forever and happily ever after. Why was it that after his wish came true, he felt a little worried and bitter? Xianxia glanced at Yu. His pink lips were gently curved. He was clearly smiling, but it was not sincere. It was as if he was forcing himself to smile. Xianxia was stunned for a long time. Then she slowly nodded and said gently, Mommy agreed. Yu's mind went blank. His eyes flickered slightly. Mommy was getting married. Chapter 1626. He didn't know if he should be happy or worried. There was a sense of disappointment in his eyes that shouldn't be there at his age. Xianxia's smile froze when she saw his complicated expression. She looked at him and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This little guy. Why did he look so disappointed and melancholy that only a father would look when his daughter was getting married? She didn't know why, but when she saw Yu's expression, she felt an inexplicable heartache. This child probably couldn't bear to part with her. At the same time, he was worried that her marriage wouldn't be perfect and blissful enough. Or perhaps, he was worried that that man wouldn't be able to give her the greatest love. Yu, are you unhappy? Xianxia probed carefully and lowered her voice. Yu immediately shook his head. No. Mommy, don't think too much. In fact, Yu's disappointment wasn't because he couldn't bear to part with her. It was because he was afraid that his daddy wouldn't be like him, who would accept his mommy unconditionally and treat her like the apple of his eye. He was selfish. He hoped that his mommy would receive the greatest love in the world. He was also conceited. He thought that the only person who could give his mommy the greatest love in the world would be him. As a father, he approved of Wuxia. But as her husband, he still held a skeptical attitude. However, he was conflicted and a little happy. Mommy was going to get married. In the future, they would no longer be lonely as a family of 4. At this thought, Yu Yu's lips curved into a smile. He looked up and his twinkling eyes were bright and beautiful, as if there were countless twinkling stars hidden in them. Mommy, I'm very happy. Mommy is going to get married. Yu Yu will definitely make Mommy the most beautiful bride in the world. When Xianxia heard this, she couldn't help but tear up. Yu Yu's intentions were incomparably precious. More precious than any treasure in the world. She hugged Yu Yu emotionally and kissed his pink cheeks. Thank you, Yu Yu. Mommy, don't say thank you. Yu Yu's tone was a little reproachful. She looked at her and laughed. Mommy's happiness is Yu Yu's happiness. Mommy, I wish you the best. With that, his lips curled into a smile as he suddenly grabbed her hand and led her to the front of the man. He then raised his head to look at him. Daddy, and Yu Yu ordered like an old man. Wuxia couldn't help but laugh a little. Looking at this overly precocious child in front of him, he secretly laughed in his heart, but his face was very serious. He obediently stretched out his palm. Yu Yu held Wuxia's palm with one hand and grabbed Xianxia's hand with the other. With a solemn expression, he carefully placed Xianxia's hand in Wuxia's palm. Daddy, in the future, you must protect Mommy well. This is what you promised me. You must cherish her for the rest of your life. Wuxia smiled and looked at Yu Yu's face. He said very seriously, Okay, I'll definitely do what I promised you. Yu Yu then revealed a bright and beautiful smile. In the sky, the fireworks were dazzling. On the tree-lined path, the festooned cars were cruising. The crystal carriage stopped beside Xianxia. Wuxia held her hand and got into the carriage. In the dreamy parade, they gradually left. Yu Yu silently watched the carriage leave, still in a daze for a long time. Chapter 1627. He poked his head out and saw that Yu Yu's eyes were slightly wet. Xianxia smiled helplessly and his gaze softened. You, don't worry. If Daddy dares to bully Mommy, I won't let him off. I'll let him have a taste of my demonic skills from the special forces in a minute. As he spoke, Xianxia waved his fist. Yu Yu was amused by his words. He couldn't help but tease him. Do you think Daddy is a pushover? Xianxia, forget it. You're still lacking in both intelligence and skills if you want to fight with Daddy. Xianxia wanted to comfort him, but he ended up being snubbed instead. His mood instantly soured. Yu Yu rubbed his eyes and said, Idiot, you're overthinking. I'm not worried that Mommy will be bullied. I'm just a little touched. Xianxia was even more surprised. You're touched. In his heart, Yu Yu had always been an extremely noble and cold existence. He was cunning and sharp-tongued, and he was extremely mature. However, today he saw the softest side of Yu Yu's heart. Alright, let's go see the float parade. Xianxia held his hand without any explanation. Yu Yu nodded and the two little lads walked in the direction of the float parade. On the float parade, Xianxia looked at the float parade that kept passing by. On the float parade, there were two actors dressed as the king and queen from the fairy tale. They were waving at the tourists by the roadside. Wuxia had spent millions to book the entire fairy tale valley and silently prepared a romantic proposal for her. Although he had booked the entire valley, it was still open to tourists. He wanted the whole world to be a witness to this proposal. Just like in the fairy tale, however, the reality was, Wuxia sat in the carriage and held his forehead in frustration. As the carriage passed by, the tourists excitedly followed it and took pictures with their cameras in their hands. Luckily, he and Xianxia were wearing masks. Wuxia, who was usually swift and decisive, suddenly felt a little embarrassed. How childish! In fact, he felt that such a proposal was a little childish for him. Since he was young, he didn't believe in fairy tales. How could there be such a dreamy love in this world? Therefore, he never dared to watch fairy tale movies and even scoffed at them. To him, love was realistic. In the past, he would have thought that it was childish to ask him to wear a prince's attire and create such a dreamy and beautiful atmosphere to propose to her. In the past, he would never have spent so much effort on a marriage proposal. Marriage was to propose to zzz. However, when he accidentally flipped through her diary, he discovered that there was a little princess living in this woman's heart. Moreover, she had a beautiful fantasy about the fantasy of fairy tales. It was just that she never mentioned it. The diary was written in elementary school. She probably felt that people would laugh at her if she told them about her dream. However, every girl wished to be a princess. At least a princess in the eyes of the man she loved. She wanted to be protected and doted on for the rest of her life. Therefore, he wanted to fulfill her dream of being a princess and give her a memorable and romantic proposal. Chapter 1628. But, sigh, Wuxia sat in the carriage, his body tense. Xianxia tilted her head to the side, not knowing whether to laugh or cry at this moment. She did not know whether to laugh or cry at the man's tense expression. Wuxia, do you feel embarrassed? She laughed and asked. It was indeed a little childish for such a noble and cold man to wear a prince's suit and sit in such a childish crystal carriage. Wuxia did not want to talk. Xianxia held his hand. Did you prepare so much in secret to give me a surprise? Wuxia patted her head. Are you happy tonight? Of course I am happy. Xianxia looked down at the gown on her body and asked in confusion, where did you get this gown? It was custom-made a long time ago. Wuxia said again, it was the main attraction of Chanel's spring fairy tale at the Milan fashion show. He liked it at first glance and had it custom-made according to her size. Xianxia was so touched that she could not speak. Sometimes Yu and Wuxia, this father and son pair, really had a strong similarity. On the surface, the two of them looked very noble and elegant, with cold expressions and cold gazes. However, sometimes when they were with their loved ones, they were so warm. Wuxia really warmed her heart this time. Wuxia. Xianxia held his arm and blushed shyly. I love you. Wuxia lowered his head and looked at her. His eyes were full of love. The night scene was charming and the stars were bright. Xianxia looked out of the window and felt very satisfied. At the side, Wuxia saw that the night had turned cold. He took off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. Hugging her shoulders, he asked, have you finished filming for today? At the mention of this, Xianxia's expression darkened. She sighed and replied dejectedly, No. I didn't perform well today, so I was scolded badly by Director Gu. You didn't perform well? Wuxia asked suspiciously, not in good condition? Xianxia had just nodded when she suddenly remembered the reason why she didn't do a good job today. She was stunned. Facing him, she suddenly felt very guilty. Wuxia found out about what happened on set today and found out about Hua Jin. What would they think of her? Would he misunderstand that she was having an affair with another man? When she thought about how Wuxia had parachuted onto the set and coincidentally met Gu Xingzi to revise with her, Xianxia still felt an inexplicable lingering fear. She didn't want him to know about this. She was afraid that he would misunderstand. She didn't want him to misunderstand. But if she didn't say it, she would feel inexplicably guilty. Wuxia saw that she kept her head down and didn't know what she was thinking. Suddenly, he said in a deep voice, Sure, don't act anymore. Marry me and be my wife. I will take care of you. Xianxia's expression suddenly froze. She lifted her head and looked at him in disbelief. I'm serious. Wuxia gazed into her eyes. Her bewilderment was reflected in his deep gaze. Let me finish. Chapter 1629. He hugged her. His gaze was filled with longing, and his eyes were filled with longing. You don't know how much I missed you in the 2 weeks that you were not around. That one sentence made her heart race. His seductive voice whispered into her ear, and his warm breath blew on her cheek, causing her heart to feel a little itchy. It was just a simple sentence, but it was full of deep meaning. Xianxia clenched her fists nervously. She was so embarrassed that her face and ears were red. She missed him too. However, other than filming, she spent most of her time memorizing the script. After filming started, there were some changes that needed to be made. Her character's lines had to be changed a lot. Hence, she spent a considerable amount of time memorizing the script. But she didn't want to. She had tried to ask Gu Xiaoyang for leave so that she could go home and spend time with her child and him. But her request was heartlessly rejected. Qin Zhou had also advised her not to ask for leave so often when filming had just started. Otherwise, the rest of the crew would misunderstand that she was enjoying special privileges. There were many people in the crew. Anything she said would be especially sensitive. If she wasn't careful, she would attract a lot of criticism. Seeing that she didn't respond, Mu Yaja grabbed her chin unhappily and narrowed his eyes. Don't tell me that you're just going to let me stay in an empty room all by myself? Stay in an empty room all by himself. Yun Shishir was almost amused by his words, which were full of bitterness. Hey, what do you mean by staying in an empty room all by myself? Yun Shishir didn't know whether to laugh or cry at his resentful tone. Hey, Muyaja, stop fooling around. I'm not fooling around. Muyaja frowned. He really didn't want her to continue working in the entertainment industry. That kind of place was too messy. It was a place where people indulged in luxury and materialistic desires. Regardless of whether they were men or women, it was a place where people abandoned all restraint. Although the entertainment industry was called the entertainment industry, what was it actually? It was just a backyard for the capitalists, a place for the rich and powerful to enjoy and play as much as they wanted. It was no longer that pure. In this day and age, those who could make a name for themselves in the entertainment industry were all backed by rich people. On the surface, it looked like a game between celebrities. In fact, the ones who were really playing the game were the capitalists behind them. She liked acting, that was fine, but he didn't want her to treat it as a career. Previously, he had thought that since she liked to perform, even though he didn't like her entering the entertainment industry and pursuing such a career, as her man, he shouldn't interfere with her. He should give her the greatest freedom to a certain extent. But now, he felt that he couldn't do that. If she treated acting as her career, then the time left for him would be greatly reduced. He had been without her for half a month. Without him, he felt that his days were dull and boring. He missed her. No matter if it was his body or mind, he missed her crazily. He was beyond redemption. He missed the days when he hugged her to sleep. Now, whether he closed his eyes or opened them, the side of the bed was empty. The huge room gave people a feeling of desolation. In the past, when she was at home, he would always feel warm whenever he came home. But now, when he opened the door, he felt that the house was a little less lively. It was too cold. Chapter 1630. Yun Shishir's heart skipped a beat. She actually saw an unconcealable loneliness on his face. It was only then that she suddenly realized, so, because of work, because of her neglect, he actually felt lonely. In her heart, a sense of guilt arose spontaneously. However, Yun Shishir was extremely conflicted. On one hand, she loved acting, but she also hated dealing with those foul and unspoken rules in the entertainment industry. On the other hand, she wanted to leave the entertainment industry to accompany him, but she felt that if a woman left her career and only stayed by a man's side, she would be like a beautiful vase and would always feel insecure. From what she knew, a woman also needed a career and needed to be self-reliant. She shouldn't rely on a man to live. Be my wife and I'll take care of you. Probably, in this world, no one would have the infinite confidence to say such a thing like him. She knew that her career might not even be worth a mention in his eyes. To her, she had worked hard to act, stayed up late to memorize the script, and dealt in that extravagant circle. In his eyes, the remuneration she received might not even be worth a minute of his benefits. To put it in a funny and ironic way, all the remuneration she received from acting in Lethal Beauty might not even be worth what he earned in a minute. However, although the remuneration was low, it was in exchange for her hard work. Being able to get the director's approval and be liked by the audience was her greatest satisfaction. Her career made her life more fulfilling. However, if she really left her career, returned to her family, and became a caged canary, she only needed to dress up beautifully and charmingly every day, like those upper-class ladies or socialites. She only needed to take care of her husband and children and surround her husband and children, but she didn't have her own career. Could it be that she would really be happy like that? Wouldn't such a life be too empty? It wasn't that she hadn't considered such a problem. However, she really lacked a sense of security. She didn't dare to use her own life as a stake to gamble her entire life. What if one day he got tired of her? What if her marriage failed? Then she wouldn't have a career or a marriage. Wouldn't such a life be too miserable? Yun Shirshir didn't dare to imagine. Perhaps he had too little confidence in himself. Mu Yaja looked at her. He didn't know what she was thinking. However, looking at her expression, it was complicated and unpredictable. It seemed that this woman was thinking about something again. He gently placed his palm on the back of her hand. Just as he was about to speak, Yun Shirshir suddenly grabbed his hand and looked up with a serious expression. Can you give me some time? Time. Yun Shirshir said seriously, I still don't want to give up my career. Mu Yaja was deeply puzzled. Shirshir, your salary is nothing in my eyes, but I earned it on my own. Yun Shirshir emphasized again. It's not about the amount, it's about my pride. Mu Yaja could not understand such pride. Chapter 1631. Mu Yaja's expression changed slightly when he heard this. What kind of logic does this woman have? He said, this is different. How is it different? Yun Shirshir stared at him intently and said, how is it different? Is it because you're a man and I'm a woman? You're the strong one and I'm the weak one. So, as the weak one, I can only give up my right to have my own career and stay at home like those rich ladies, waiting for you to come back. Day after day, boring through each and every day? Is that so? Mu Yaja was suddenly speechless. Or is it because I'm a woman, so you're certain that I don't have your ability and that the money I earn won't be enough to support you? Yun Shirshir asked again. Mu Yaja narrowed his eyes. It's not what you think. Yun Shirshir was silent for a moment and stared at him. She took a deep breath and asked, then what is it? Mu Yaja pondered for a long time and suddenly said, I just want you to spend more time with me. Yun Shirshir laughed and said in a low voice, but I've never been anyone's personal subordinate since I was born, right? I shouldn't exist just to accompany you, right? Yun Shirshir continued. Mu Yaja couldn't argue with her. Yun Shirshir sighed and said plainly, actually, I know that you don't like my career. Although you won't interfere with me, I know that you don't like my job. Every look in your eyes, every expression, every detail is silently telling me that you hate my acting. You hate that I neglect you because of my acting. She paused for a moment and nodded with a guilty look. Yes, I know that there are many times when I neglect you, Yu and Xiaoyichen. Especially in the last half a month, I really didn't have time to care about you. It's my fault. I admit that I also feel very guilty. I'm very sorry. Especially when I saw the birthday party you guys prepared for me, I felt especially guilty. I'm sorry. Mu Yaja's gaze softened. You don't have to apologize. It's not your fault. But I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to be like those rich ladies and become a caged canary. Yun Shirshir covered his hand and pleaded, so, please give me a little more time, okay? I have my own plans and I have my own plans for the future. Please don't interfere with me, just like how I will never interfere with your career, okay? What's your plan? Yun Shirshir smiled and said, I want to be a director in the future. Also, I hope to set up my own film and television company. I want to invest in my own scripts, shoot movies, and produce films. For now, I'll be an actor for the time being. Once I've accumulated enough capital, I'll work hard to transform into a behind-the-scenes role. If you want, I can fulfill your wish right now. Mu Yaja held her hand. Yun Shirshir's expression froze and her smile turned cold. But right now, I don't have the confidence to run such a big company. At least give me some time to train myself. Mu Yaja remained silent. Chapter 1632. Yun Shirshir pleaded, I promise you that I will make adjustments in the future. I will choose between work and family and try my best to take care of all of you. I'm really sorry that I didn't consider your feelings during this period of time. But I promise that I will try my best to avoid such things from happening again. When Mu Yaja heard this, even though he was conflicted, he still decided not to interfere with any of her decisions. He knew her well. This stupid woman lacked a sense of security too much. She could be a rice worm for the rest of her life, but she was stubborn in her bones and was unwilling to depend on anyone to live. Just like Yu. He already had a lot of wealth, but he still hid it from Xianxia. Firstly, he did not want her to worry too much about him. Secondly, even if Yu was worth billions, Xianxia would not depend on him to live. This was also why she was cute and charming. She was different from those materialistic women in the industry who were greedy for power. He probably hoped to earn money with his own ability and spend his own money in a dignified manner. In fact, she was indeed very talented in acting. It was indeed a good choice to work behind the scenes in the future. How much time do you need? He raised his eyebrows and asked. His attitude showed that he had already compromised. Xianxia thought for a moment and then smiled. Give me 5 years. 5 years was enough for him to accumulate experience. In these 5 years, she would work hard to learn and accumulate more surprises to be fully prepared for her transition behind the scenes in the future. Actually, it's not that I didn't think of retiring, but I'm the one who decided to act. Since I made this decision, I should be responsible for my own decision. If I quit now, not to mention the sky-high liquidated damages, I will definitely implicate Qinzhou. If I suddenly announce that I'm quitting the entertainment industry in the middle of filming, this would be a little too irresponsible. I know that I didn't have the chance to take care of my family for the past 2 weeks, and I feel very guilty. I thought about it and decided to ask Qinzhou to help me and the crew to try to take 2 days off every week to go home. After this film, I will only accept works that I like. I won't let my schedule be so full anymore. If he took a step back, she would also take a step back. Moreover, she was very sincere. She had always placed her family first. Before this, she never expected that after entering the entertainment industry, she would be so busy that she didn't even have time to take care of her family. She had originally planned to focus on her family after filming The Green Apple and occasionally take on a few projects that she was interested in. During this process, she would work hard to study screenwriting and directing. Between acting and directing, she was more interested in directing. When her abilities matured, perhaps she could also help him manage Huanyu. She knew that it would be very tiring, but she was happy to be able to work hard with her own ability. However, she really couldn't do it if she had to rely on anyone to survive. After she finished speaking, she looked at him with some apprehension. She was afraid that he would object and that he would not understand. Wuxia frowned but did not object in the end. He curled his thin lips and looked at her gently. He raised his hand and gently stroked her head with a doting smile. Good. I will wait for you. He gave her 5 years. These words gave Xianxia great relief. Chapter 1633. Leaning on his shoulder, she said softly, Wuxia, thank you. Thank you for understanding my stubbornness. Thank you for understanding my decision. She leaned over, her soft and exquisite body pressing against his. Wuxia hugged her tightly, but purposely teased her. He lowered his head and kissed her red lips, asking back, How do you plan to thank me? Xianxia looked up, only to see him looking at her with a bit of passion and anticipation. Xianxia suddenly smiled, her bright eyes reflecting the gorgeous fireworks in the sky. Her smile was like a flower. Amidst the fireworks in the sky, she took the initiative to hook her arms around his neck. Her beautiful face leaned closer to him, and then her sweet red lips gently pressed against his thin lips that were cold from the cold wind. The kiss deepened, gentle and charming. The crystal horse carriage drove through the romantic cherry blossom avenue. The passers-by looked up and saw an indescribably beautiful woman kissing a handsome man in the carriage. They all exclaimed in amazement, "Oh my God! Quick, look at the horse carriage. It's so romantic. I heard that Fairy Tale Valley has been booked by someone today, decorating it dreamily for the proposal ceremony, and it's open to tourists for free. Let the tourists witness it. Don't tell me it's the 2 people in the horse carriage? The woman is so beautiful, and the man is so handsome. Oh my God! They're so compatible." Under the witness of the crowd, under the beautiful and gorgeous fireworks, Xianxia hugged him, kissed him, and used the most intimate way to respond to him. Wuxia could not help but wrap his arms around her slim waist. His sexy lips curled into a slight smile. He was obviously very satisfied with her initiative. This kiss continued all the way to the main gate, and he was still reluctant to part. From the beginning, she took the initiative, until later, when she fell into his control, he kept attacking with impatient passion, attacking the city, unwilling to be separated from her. Xianxia was almost suffocated by his kiss. In a daze, she tried to force herself to sober up, but from the corner of her eyes, she saw that the horse carriage had already driven to the main gate, and the extended Bentley was waiting quietly at the gate. However, the driver standing in front of the car door did not dare to look directly at it, his head lowered, eyes and nose looking down, not daring to disturb them. She was even more embarrassed. Clenching her fist, she lightly punched his shoulder. But he was unmoved, not allowing her to escape. He held her neck tightly, forcing her lips to be closer to his, the tip of his tongue between her lips, constantly stealing her sweet breath. How long has it been since he tasted such deliciousness? He already could not remember. Kissing her, he could not stop. No. Xianxia was angry and embarrassed. This man, how could he not bear to stop once he started kissing her? There were so many people at the gate. Didn't he know he? From the corner of her eyes, Xianxia saw that many tourists were either stunned or heckling around the horse carriage, constantly raising the cameras in their hands, trying to capture such a romantic and beautiful scene. Wasn't this a little too high profile? Xianxia punched his shoulder, but before she could say anything to stop him, she felt the world spinning in front of her eyes. This man actually carried her in his arms and stepped out of the horse carriage. Chapter 1634. Xianxia saw the heat in his eyes. You, Shu. Wuxia's voice was hoarse and dark, as if he was trying hard to suppress something. Be good, don't talk. Her soft and bone-chilling voice was undoubtedly the most powerful aphrodisiac at this moment. If he wasn't careful, he would be completely ignited. He could still barely hold it in. Wuxia carried her and walked to the front of the car. The concierge opened the car door, and he hugged her and stepped into the car. Just as the car door closed, he pressed a button to raise the partition between the driver's seat and the back seat. The covetous look in his eyes made her feel an inexplicable fear. Wuxia, you, before she could finish her sentence, he pushed her down onto the seat. Immediately after, his tall body pressed down on her. Don't. She widened her eyes in panic and instinctively reached out to push him away. However, she was resisting, which aroused his desire to conquer her even more. When it came to matters of love, a man's desire to conquer would arise spontaneously from his bones. Moreover, he had to be in control of all the initiative. Even if she resisted, with her small strength, there was no way she could go against him. Moreover, she was going against the current Wuxia. As if he had gone mad, he covered her with his body and fiercely kissed her lips. Like a young man who had tasted the forbidden fruit for the first time, his kiss was impatient and predatory as he constantly sought her sweetness. Xianxia was almost unable to breathe from his kiss. She pushed his chest, but the man's heavy body was like Mount Tai, attacking her like a mountain toppling over. No matter how hard she tried, she still couldn't move an inch. Hey, Xianxia struggled uneasily, pushing him away and avoiding him. Wuxia suddenly pressed on her shoulders and opened his handsome eyes. She suddenly looked up and met his deep and endless eyes. The heat in his eyes fell on her face, as if it would burn her. He looked back at her. She stared at him, her eyes as helpless as a fawn's. Her charming eyes were like silk, and her beautiful peach blossom eyes were overflowing with light, rippling with gentle and beautiful emotions. Especially at this moment, it was as if her face was smeared with a layer of rouge. It was so damn charming. The sight of her caused him to feel as if a wave of terrifying numbness was spreading along a certain part of his body, causing his tendons and bones to soften and spread throughout his entire body. He wished for nothing more than to ruthlessly eat her up at this very moment. Looking into his dark eyes, it was as if there were two flames burning fiercely, as if they were going to devour her soul. However, in the end, he managed to maintain his last bit of rationality. Wuxia tried his best to control himself, suppressing the impulses in his body that were ready to explode. He hugged her, but he did not dare to move anymore. Hugging her tightly, his heavy breaths echoed in her ears, one after another, like a ferocious beast eyeing its prey, constantly letting out heavy breaths. She was shy and helpless as he pinned her under his body. Similarly, she did not dare to make any rash movements. She was afraid that if she wasn't careful, she would agitate him instead. Separated by a thin layer of clothing, she could easily feel the change in a certain part of his body. At this moment, it was already as hot as iron. She didn't dare to move even more. Her face was flushed red, and she was so shy that her face and ears were red. What was this? She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This man was actually so. Chapter 1635. Mu Yaja hugged her even tighter. Every minute and second felt like an eternity of torture. His tense body was screaming, and the fire in his body was raging. Every second he endured, his breathing became heavier. Who knew what he was enduring? Enduring wasn't his style. If it were in the past, he would have wanted to skin her alive and integrate her into his bones and blood. However, he was afraid of scaring her. He knew very well that this woman did not like to do it in the car. So, to take care of her feelings, he had to endure until they reached the hotel. However, enduring like this was really torturous and painful. The thin layer of sweat on his forehead was seeping from his skin, silently telling her how much pain he was in. Xianxia did not know whether to laugh or cry, and her heart ached. After not seeing her for half a month, he really missed her. Whether it was his body or his heart. Damn it, he missed her. From his tense body and the fiery temperature, she could feel how hard this man was enduring at this moment. She hugged him tightly, and her heart could not bear to see him like this. Therefore, she held his handsome face lovingly and kissed him encouragingly between his eyebrows. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "Thank you for doing so much for her. Thank you for giving in and changing for her." He used to be such a proud man, but for her, he kept changing and giving in. "Kiss me." His dark eyes were burning brightly as he stared at her face and said to her. Xianxia smiled and kissed his thin lips. However, he was not satisfied. He kissed her lips deeply, as if he could use this to cool down his burning body and mind. Unexpectedly, this kiss was so inseparable that they kissed all the way. When the car stopped at the entrance of the hotel, he hugged her. The person in his arms was already in a daze from his kiss, and she did not know where she was from. When they were outside the car, the chauffeur gently knocked on the car window and said carefully, "Xiao Mu, we've arrived." Only then did the two people in the car wake up. He left her lips, only to see her face in a daze. Her face was tender and naive, but it made her even more charming. She, on the other hand, felt a little dizzy from his kiss. When she left his lips, her eyes were slightly narrowed and the world was spinning in front of her eyes. His kissing skills were improving day by day, and in front of him, she was like a pitiful newbie. She was still a little inexperienced and was controlled by him, allowing him to dominate her. He couldn't help but smile as he lightly patted her face. "We're here, little fool." Xianxia was still in a daze. She opened her eyes and looked around. When she pulled open the curtains, she realized that the car had stopped. She asked dizzily, "Where is this hotel?" Just as he finished speaking, before she could regain her senses, he pulled her into his arms and got out of the car. She let out a soft "ah." At the entrance of the hotel, rows of waiters stood respectfully. Under everyone's gaze, he carried her in his arms and walked through the door grandly. Once again, Xianxia was so embarrassed that her face was burning red. Why was this man so high profile? Couldn't he keep a lower profile? If other people saw him carrying her like this, what would they think? She gently hit his shoulders and said softly, "Hey, can you put me down? I can walk on my own." Chapter 1636. He loved her dearly. Seeing her in a daze, her body limp and weak without any energy, how could she walk? But if Xianxia knew what the man was thinking at that moment, she would roll her eyes again. Heavens, just how precious was she in his heart. He couldn't even bear to walk a few steps. Sometimes, it really wasn't an exaggeration. In front of this man, Her pair of legs were just like decorations. They were purely for looks and had no practical use at all. But if he could do that, Mu Yaja was willing to carry her like this all the time. He couldn't wait for her to grow on his body. If Yun Shirshir knew what he was thinking, she would probably not know whether to laugh or cry. He carried her and got out of the car. As if he didn't see the embarrassment on her face, he hugged her and strode towards the hotel with big steps. When the 2 rows of concierges saw him, they all lowered their heads and bowed in unison. All of them kept their heads down and didn't dare to look up. With the concierge leading the way, he carried her into the elevator. Under her many requests, he finally put her down. However, she didn't know if it was because she had been pressed down by him for a long time, but the moment her feet touched the ground, she went limp and almost fell to the ground. She managed to support him and barely managed to stand firm. The man looked at her, but there was a hint of playfulness in his eyes. He stretched out his long arm and wrapped it around her slender waist. His strong arm firmly supported her and lifted her body up a little. The elevator door slowly closed. At that moment, only the 2 of them were left in the narrow space. The quieter the space, the clearer the sound of the man's covetous breathing could be heard. It was heavy and deep, rising and falling one after another. It was obvious that he had endured to the point where he was on the verge of exploding. Yun Shirshir held onto his arm and could clearly feel his tense muscles. She didn't know why, but she inexplicably felt her legs go limp. Her face and ears were red as she thought about how this man had suppressed himself for so long. She didn't know what kind of storm she would have to face next. Because of that, she felt a little uneasy and didn't know what to do. The hotel building was 30 stories high. The suite he booked was on the 28th floor. The floor numbers jumped and the elevator continued to climb. At the same time, the temperature in the elevator also rose. Yun Shirshir sensed that his body was getting hotter and hotter, and she silently wanted to hide to the side. However, he immediately noticed her subtle movement and abruptly grabbed her waist. He snorted, "What are you hiding for? I won't eat you." Would it eat her up? She couldn't help but question his words. This man was truly a monster. It was as if he had an inexhaustible amount of energy, and he never felt tired at all. How could he be so powerful? She had heard that most men would only be able to last one night in bed before they would be exhausted. However, this man only needed to recharge his energy for a short period of time, take a shower, and change into a suit. Then, he would return to his work in high spirits with the demeanor of an elite of the empire. Wasn't he tired? Or was he born with great physical strength? According to her observation, this was under the condition that he was conservative. Every time he still had some reservations in bed, she was already being tormented to the point where she was about to fall apart. If he didn't hold back, what would happen? Chapter 1637. Yun Shirshir couldn't control herself from letting her imagination run wild. When she came back to her senses, she clenched her fists tightly. She was secretly annoyed at herself for thinking of such a dirty question. On one hand, she forced herself to stop thinking about it. On the other hand, she was extremely curious about this man's physical potential. Was he too strong, or was she too weak? This was a problem. As Yun Shirshir thought about it, she blushed and pursed her lips. She felt that her moral integrity was almost eaten up. She could even seriously probe into such a question. She really didn't know shame. Mu Yaja glanced at her from the corner of his eyes and saw that her cheeks were flushed red. She was secretly sizing him up while holding her burning hot face. She looked like she didn't know what to do. He didn't know what kind of nonsense was going on in this little head of hers. There was obviously something wrong with her expression. Hence, he asked, "What are you thinking about?" His sudden voice had startled her. She suddenly raised her head and shook her head guiltily. She hurriedly said, "I'm not thinking about any messy questions." Mu Yaja squinted his eyes suspiciously. She was giving herself away. This stupid woman. He didn't say anything, but she was so nervous. Her words were obviously trying to cover it up. Yun Shirshir had just finished her words when she suddenly realized what she meant by not thinking about any messy questions. She had said such strange words, and it would only make him more suspicious. She was so embarrassed that she was about to die. She was as childish and ridiculous as a child. Perhaps it was because she wasn't a match for this man. She had never been good at hiding her thoughts. If there was anything, she didn't know how to hide it properly. Hence, she had become a joke to him. He suddenly closed in on her and wrapped his arms tightly around her waist. Step by step, he pressed on. Tell me honestly, what kind of nonsense are you thinking about? I'm really not thinking about any nonsense. The more Xianxia said, the less confident she was. Even she wouldn't believe what she said. As for this man, his skills were so much higher than hers. Obviously, he wouldn't believe what she said. Hence, he leaned over slightly and got closer to her face. Sticking close to her ear, he said seductively, "Say it. Otherwise, I'll do you right now." His words were obviously laced with danger. Xianxia suddenly looked up and met his threatening eyes. She flew into a rage out of humiliation. "You." "I didn't just say that." Wuxia smiled like an experienced hunter. His elegance and calmness were akin to that of a prey trapped in the palm of his hand. Moreover, he was full of interest. Xianxia got even angrier. However, under his threat, she lowered her head and said unwillingly, "Nothing much. I'm just curious about one thing. That's all." "What?" "You," she took a deep breath. "You never seem to get tired." Wuxia was stunned. Suddenly, he was amused by her serious look. He immediately guessed what she was secretly probing. "What are you laughing at? You little fool. You're too weak." The elevator door opened. He took her hand and strode into the room. He walked so fast that she stumbled behind him, unable to keep up. Wuxia. Chapter 1638. Don't. The door wasn't closed yet. However, what she got in return was the man's kiss. It was as if at this moment, the emotions that had been suppressed for a long time had finally been released. For the past half a month, including the journey from Fairy Tale Valley to the hotel, he had been trying his best to restrain himself so that at this moment, he would not hold back at all. He lowered his head, pressed down on her shoulders, and kissed her deeply. The ferocious and predatory energy was comparable to when they were in the car just now. In fact, it was even more ferocious. Even though she repeatedly cried out in surprise, she could not resist him. He pressed his lips against hers and swallowed all of her resistance and rejection into his stomach. Previously, to take care of her, he had tolerated himself. However, now that they were here, it was the world where he could do whatever he wanted. He did not need to care about those trivial matters, and he did not need to suffer any more. Now, he only needed to think about how to properly taste her goodness. In an instant, he had filtered out more than 10 positions in his mind. Just as his fingertips touched her skin, he felt a burning sensation and kissed her fiercely. In the past half a month, he had missed her so much that he had missed her so much. He was also surprised that he could actually control himself and not fly to the set to look for her. This woman had a unique charm. Once he had tasted her, he would never forget her. No matter what, he would always be able to recall her sweetness. In this world, other than her, there was probably no other woman who could be so compatible with him. As he kissed her, it was as if he was reminded of the time when he had her. That carefree and unrestrained feeling was still vivid in his mind. When he touched her, it was as if he was bewitched and could not get rid of it. Door. As Xianxia struggled, she tried her best to remind him that he seemed to have something that he had not done. However, Wuxia was a little impatient. His long arms stretched out and with a click, the door was successfully closed as she wished. When she saw this, she heaved a sigh of relief. In the next second, she was lifted into the air. He actually reached out and his strong arm held her up steadily. At this moment, she was facing him with her back against the entryway, but her whole body was lifted into the air by him. "Look at me." Wuxia reached out a hand and grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at him. "Look at me." Xianxia looked at him and her gaze froze. "Stupid woman, you should concentrate now." He was a little dissatisfied that she was distracted by unimportant things, so there was some displeasure in his eyes. "All of your time tonight belongs to me." After saying that, he steadied her and withdrew from her. The emotions that he had been suppressing for a long time were already clamoring to the extreme. With a ferocious ferocity, he practically charged straight into her. He didn't give her any room to breathe. He pressed her down and took her for himself. Ferocious, he was as ferocious as a wild beast. He wanted her, 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 he wanted her. Even though she was prepared for it, she was still frightened by such a shocking impact. After he was done, he panted heavily and hugged her, not willing to let go. Holding her in his arms, he walked to the living room, sat on the sofa, and continued what he had yet to enjoy. Chapter 1639. The battle lasted until midnight, but the man was still not satisfied. He fully displayed his seemingly inexhaustible stamina, and it was as if he wanted to use this night to vent all his longing for her for the past half a month. When he was aroused, he kept calling her name, and she kept responding to him. At first, she tried her best to cooperate with him, but later on, she was so tired that she gradually lost her stamina. The battle was close to madness, and the smoke of gunpowder filled every corner of the bedroom. She only felt that the world had gone crazy. The sky was spinning, and the earth was moving. The whole world seemed to be collapsing, and the earth was shaking. All her rationality was ethereal, and it was difficult for her to return to her shell. Her mind was filled with the thought that he had gone crazy. And she, too, had gone crazy. They had both gone crazy. It was as if their bodies no longer belonged to them. Their bodies were dripping with sweat, and it was sticky. It felt as if the two of them had been fished out of a pool. Outside the door, the two little lads were curiously leaning against the door. They originally wanted to sneak around and find out what was going on. However, they were helpless as the soundproofing of the hotel was really amazing. The two of them wanted to stick their ears to the door, but they still couldn't hear anything. "Sigh, forget it." Yu suddenly snorted and said, "I listened to your nonsense, and that's why I came to do such a thing with you. Eavesdropping on Daddy and Mommy is too despicable. If Daddy finds out, he'll be angry again." Xianxia felt wronged and said, "Boo, you were the one who wanted to steal. Shut up." Yu blushed and covered his mouth. He said anxiously, "If you continue to talk nonsense, I'll ignore you." "But I won't talk nonsense anymore. I wanted to eavesdrop, so I pulled you along." As an older brother, Xianxia naturally gave in to him, so he couldn't be bothered to argue with him. Yu was satisfied. He pursed his lips and looked at Xianxia with a smile. He opened his palm and said, "Okay, let's go back to the room to rest." But Xianxia held his hand, and the two little rascals held hands as they returned to their room to rest. It was late at night outside the window. With a deep groan from the man, the two of them climbed up the gorgeous clouds. At this time, the two bodies lying on the bed were already soaked in hot sweat. Towards the end, he suddenly grabbed her cheeks and kissed her seductive little mouth. Yun Shershir's cries were all overbearingly swallowed by him. With the last bit of strength, he completely relaxed his tense body and laid on top of her, panting heavily and rapidly. The man's sexy and deep breathing kept echoing in her ears. His warm breath brushed against her ear, making her feel itchy, but she was powerless to resist. After that, she was completely paralyzed in his arms, unable to move at all. And the important responsibility of dealing with the aftermath naturally fell on him. After Mu Yaja calmed down, he couldn't help but scratch the bridge of her nose. "Little rascal! This stupid woman." Throughout the whole process, he was the one who put in the effort. What about her? After everything was over, she was like a little rascal who only knew how to act shamelessly. She was paralyzed in his arms and didn't want to move at all. But it wasn't her fault. Chapter 1640. When he calmed his breathing, she was still panting heavily. One after another, it was as if the surrounding air was extremely thin and she was almost unable to breathe. It was as if he was trying his best to fill it up, but no matter what, he felt that it was not enough. Under his enlightenment, her body seemed to have turned into a puddle of spring water. Mu Yaja hugged her and walked into the bathroom. He filled the bathtub with warm water and sank her into the water, letting the two of their bodies submerge in it. When he calmed down, he liked to hold her like this. Then he would quietly admire her beauty. Yun Shirshir nestled in his arms, her left face quietly pressed against his chest. The hair on her face was soaked with sweat and messily stuck to her face. However, after hundreds of years, it did not affect her pure beauty in the slightest. Her beauty was a kind of otherworldly beauty that did not hide a trace of dirt. At this moment, her eyes were half closed and there was a trace of drifting in her eyes. Her long and thick eyelashes drooped down, covering her eyelids with a layer of shadow. Her eyelashes were moistened with sweat and there were a few droplets of mist standing on them, making this beauty even more ethereal. He secretly thought in his heart that if it was in the ancient times, she would definitely be an evil concubine that would bring disaster to the country. She would definitely be the kind of beauty that would cause chaos in the imperial court. So much so that for him who had always had a firm heart, in that moment, a cold thought suddenly floated in his mind. He might as well just die on top of her. Mu Yaja helped her clean up and at the same time, he still could not control himself from entangling with her lips. Yun Shirshir, however, was enjoying his gentle intimacy. She hooked her arms around his shoulders and responded to his kiss. Occasionally, she would stick out the tip of her tongue and poke him. Mu Yaja originally wanted to teach her a lesson, but just as he carried her upright, this pitiful little woman was so wronged that she was begging for mercy. I really can't do it today. I will be killed by you here. Let me go, please. I don't want it. I really can't want it anymore. Seeing her so pitiful, Mu Yaja showed mercy and dispelled the thought. After the two of them had taken a shower, he wiped her clean and carried her back to the bedroom. After getting on the bed, Yun Shirshir comfortably rested her head on his arm and fell asleep soundly. This sleep was peaceful and steady, and it was actually a dreamless sleep. Early in the morning, he was woken up by the urgent ringing of the phone in the living room. Yun Shirshir was still sleepy, but Mu Yaja was suddenly woken up. He put on a bathrobe and walked to the living room. He saw that it was Yun Shirshir's phone ringing in her handbag. He picked up the phone and heard Qinzhou's voice on the other end. Shirshir, where are you? Yesterday, the crew found out that it was your birthday and wanted to celebrate with you, but you disappeared without a trace. Mu Yaja's brows sank slightly when he heard the manager's voice. She's with me. These 5 words were a high-profile declaration of sovereignty. In his eyes, Qinzhou was undoubtedly a big love rival. It was a heinous crime to divide up the time that they spent together. Before Yun Shirshir could respond, Qinzhou heard Mu Yaja's deep voice and was so shocked that he almost threw his phone away. After a short moment of shock, Qinzhou laughed. Chairman Mu. So Shirshir is with you. I'm relieved. Shirshir is now? She's still sleeping. Chapter 1641. The words "too tired" left enough room for one's imagination to run wild. The corners of his lips twitched. He could almost guess the reason behind her "too tired." They hadn't seen each other for more than half a month. They must have been busy until late last night. Qinzhou looked down and cleared his throat. Then he said awkwardly, "Okay. I won't disturb Chairman Mu's rest. By the way, please send my regards to Yun Shirshir on my behalf. Happy birthday." Mu, however, replied, "You can say that to her face. I'm never in charge of passing on messages." Qinzhou. His tone was so harsh early in the morning. Just a few words and it was full of tension. It seemed like he was implying that he was blaming him for making her schedule too full. There was clearly a hidden meaning in his words. Qinzhou awkwardly exchanged a few more words before hanging up the phone. After giving it some thought, he realized that he had indeed made her schedule too full recently. After reflecting on it, he made another call to rearrange her schedule. Mu Yaja hung up the phone and returned to his room. In the afternoon, Yun Shirshir was jolted awake by the noisy ringtone of her phone. She abruptly woke up from the ringing of the bell. She opened her eyes and heard the ringing of the bell. She turned her head and realized that the phone in her handbag had unknowingly been placed next to her pillow. She calmed her disturbed state of mind. Just as she raised her hand and was about to grab her phone, she was suddenly shocked by the feeling of accounting coming from the joints of her arm. It's so sore. Yun Shirshir frowned and mumbled. She endured the pain and picked up the phone. Yun Yecheng's apologetic voice came from the other end. Sure. Are you free this afternoon? This afternoon. Yun Sure looked around the room. Only then did she recall the madness last night and where she was at the same time. The curtains in the room were closed, so she could not see the weather outside the window, nor could she tell what time it was. However, based on her sense of time, she knew that it was very late. When she turned around, the side of the bed was already empty. She didn't know when the man had left. From this, she could deduce that it was already late. Yun Sure held her phone and her face suddenly turned pale. She remembered that she had a scene this afternoon. Only then did Yun Sure remember that she still had to film a scene today. Yesterday, her scene with Hua Jin had not been completed. Logically speaking, she still had to shoot another scene today. And now, it must be almost noon, right? Oh my God. She had slept so deeply that she had wasted so much time. Why didn't that man remember to wake her up? She had a lot of work to do in the afternoon. She didn't know if she could make it in time. Sure? On the other end, Yun Yecheng's voice snapped her out of her daze. Yun Sure suddenly came back to her senses and smiled. Daddy, I'm listening. I should be able to get to the train station this afternoon. However, I have a lot of luggage, so it's not very convenient. So, I wanted to ask if you have time to come over and help your uncle. After saying this, he paused for a moment before quickly adding, it's okay if you're really busy. If you really can't make it, you can take a taxi back. Yun Sure was a little conflicted. She had a scene in the afternoon. However, she really couldn't bear to see her father rushing, so she asked, what time will you reach the station in the afternoon? Chapter 1642. Alright, don't worry, give me a call when you arrive, and I'll come over to pick you up. Do you have anything on in the afternoon? If you have something to say, then just let it go. The man persisted, still thinking of her best interests. Yun Sure laughed. What can I have on? Dad, don't worry. I'm free this afternoon. He smiled, feeling touched by her thoughtfulness. After giving her a few more words of advice, he hung up the phone. She looked at the time and saw that it was 11:30 p.m. Hence, she hurriedly dialed Director Gu's number. She wanted to ask when the afternoon shoot would end, but the man politely said, Sure, it was your birthday yesterday. I wanted to arrange for everyone in the production team to celebrate your birthday, but unfortunately, I don't know where you went afterward. Since it's your birthday, I'll give you 2 days off. Have a good rest today and tomorrow. Report to the production team the day after tomorrow. The man's kind words gave her a huge shock. To be honest, she was a little dumbfounded. In reality, she had called Gu Xiaoyang to ask for a day off, but when she thought about how she had left the set without permission yesterday, she braced herself for a harsh scolding. Trembling with fear, she waited for Gu Xiaoyang to give her a good scolding. After all, the production team clearly stated that no one was allowed to leave the set without permission. It was the same as clocking in at work. One was not allowed to leave without permission. Yesterday, she had left the set without saying a word. Logically speaking, Director Gu would definitely criticize her for speaking on her own. He would also give her an appropriate punishment. In the end, he would make an announcement to the entire set to punish her as an example to others. However, he didn't expect Gu Xiaoyang to be so reasonable after this phone call. He even approved 2 days of leave. 2 days of leave? Did the sun rise from the west? This was a rather luxurious treatment that only A-list stars or protagonists could enjoy. Yun Sure was ecstatic. Although she had an unfinished scene and felt a little uncomfortable with the unfinished work hanging there, these few days were indeed too tiring for her. She needed time to rest properly. After half a month of continuous filming, she was already exhausted. She had applied for leave several times, but the director did not approve it. She did not expect to be granted leave today. Yun Sure was so excited that she couldn't calm down. She put down her phone, sat up, and lifted the quilt to get out of bed. However, just as she lifted the quilt, she suddenly saw the ambiguous marks on her body. Especially the base of her thighs, there were actually bruises. She was so embarrassed that she couldn't even show her face. Her skin was very white and tender. Even if she was casually pinched without using any strength, it would leave an eye-catching mark. Not to mention the unrestrained battle last night. When she thought of this, Yun Shirshir felt extremely embarrassed. When she got off the bed, the moment her toes touched the ground, she almost fell down. Oh God! Her thighs were sore and swollen, and her waist was so soft. She didn't know what had happened to her body after that night. When he got off the bed, his whole body was in a daze, and there was even a faint feeling of lack of oxygen. Rather than saying that he was crushed by the wheels, it would be more appropriate to say that his entire body felt like it was falling apart. At this moment, even moving his arms was strenuous. Yun Shirshir calmed down, gently massaged her waist, took a deep breath, and got off the bed. Chapter 1643. Pushing open the door, she was greeted with a room filled with warm sunlight. The sun was shining brightly outside the window. This was a luxurious suite that included a small business conference room, a living room, a bedroom, a bathroom, and a study room. Yun Shirshir put on a bathrobe and walked into the study room. She saw Mu Yaja sitting in front of the computer, staring intently at the screen. He was so focused that he didn't realize that Yun Shirshir was standing behind him. It was only when she leaned against his back and wrapped her arms around his shoulders that he suddenly realized that she had entered the room without him knowing. Are you busy? Yun Shirshir rested her chin on his shoulder and looked at the computer screen in front of him, only to realize, to her annoyance, that the files on the screen were actually a series of densely packed financial reports. Just looking at them gave her a headache. It turned out that he was dealing with the company's quarterly financial reports. She said guiltily, "Did I disturb you?" Mu Yaja smiled and patted the back of her hand gently. His voice was gentle as he asked, "Why don't you rest for a while? If you continue sleeping, it'll be night soon." Yun Shirshir paused and laughed. "Why didn't you wake me up when you were awake?" Mu Yaja raised his eyebrows and said innocently, "I saw that you were sleeping soundly and even snoring like a little pig. That's why I didn't wake you up." Snoring? Yun Shirshir was shocked. She was shocked and retorted with a red face, "You're talking nonsense. I never snore when I sleep." "Why didn't you snore?" Mu Yaja wanted to tease her, though, so he said in all seriousness, "You're snoring really badly. Like a little pig. When I called you, you even smacked your lips. You don't look like a lady at all." She panicked. He was so serious that Yun Shirshir believed his words without a doubt. She really thought that she really snored when she slept. Oh my God. She snored. It was so embarrassing to snore when sleeping. In her impression, snoring while sleeping was a coarse behavior that only middle-aged men would have. She had always valued her bearing. When she thought about how she had actually snored and let this man hear it, for a moment, she only felt her cheeks burning. It was incomparably embarrassing. Feeling conflicted, Yun Shirshir bit her lower lip. She wanted to cry but had no tears. Pouting, she carefully defended herself. Actually, it's normal for people to snore sometimes. Sometimes, when people are too tired, they will snore when they sleep. Halfway through her words, she felt embarrassed. She wanted to say that he didn't mind her. Mu Yaja, on the other hand, was tickled by his earnest attempt to absolve himself. Thus, he raised his hand and couldn't help but pinch the tip of her nose as he teased, "You're not just snoring. I really want to take a picture of how ugly you look when you sleep." "What's wrong with me? What do you mean not only? What's wrong with me?" Mu Yaja nodded seriously. "Does drooling count with drooling? Boom, wait a minute." Yun Shirshir's face flushed red. Why was she drooling? Yun Shirshir was so shocked that she instinctively touched her mouth, but she didn't feel any saliva stains. Chapter 1644. Mu Yaja slapped her hand away. "Stop touching. When I woke up in the morning, your saliva was all over my arm. I used a towel to wipe it clean for you." He said it so seriously that Yun Shirshir believed him even more. With a dejected look, she said, "Why was I salivating? I really don't know." As she said that, she bit her lips in annoyance and cried out in her heart, "It's over, it's over." Her ugly sleeping state was actually seen by this man. Yun Shirshir was very concerned about her image in his heart. Salivating and snoring. Why was she like those middle-aged men who picked their feet when she was asleep? Seeing her reaction, Mu Yaja found it cute and interesting. He couldn't help but curve his lips and snigger. Yun Shirshir heard him snickering and looked at him suspiciously. Alas, he was quick to restrain himself. By the time he looked at her, his smile had already disappeared and he was looking at her with a straight face. He did not know how to laugh at all. I might really be too tired. I hope you don't mind. However, Mu Yaja harumphed coldly. Salivating and snoring. I can tolerate that. But do you know that talking in your sleep in the middle of the night, rolling up the blanket, and even kicking people? That's really too much. Yun Shirshir widened her eyes in shock and looked at him in disbelief. That's impossible. When I'm sleeping, I'm quite well behaved. I've never kicked people or talked in my sleep. For her, rolling up the blanket was especially too much. When I woke up in the middle of the night, the blanket on my body was gone. As he said that, Mu Yaja sighed helplessly. I really don't know how badly you tormented me last night. Yun Shirshir bit her lips. She really wanted to cry but had no tears. She really didn't know that she had so many bad habits when she was asleep. Mu Yaja even sneezed according to the situation, scaring Yun Shirshir so much that she didn't know what to do. Are you alright? It's fine. Mu Yaja frowned. She probably caught a cold. When Yun Shirshir heard this, she felt even more regretful. She wrapped her arms around his and said, I'm sorry, I didn't know. I really didn't know my sleeping posture was so bad. That was because I had always slept alone. Yu had never said that when I slept with him in the past. That's why I didn't know I had a bad sleeping posture. When Mu Yaja heard this, he laughed in his heart, but on the surface, he pretended to be noble and cold, ignoring her. Yun Shirshir was even more frightened, thinking that what he said was true. She said pitifully, Did you catch a cold? If I catch a cold, I'll feel guilty. Just as she was racking her brains to come up with a way to smooth things over, the man's lips curled into a smile as he suddenly wrapped his arms around her waist. In just a split second, he had her in his embrace. Lowering his head to look at her, he lovingly planted a kiss on her cheek. Little idiot, no matter how bad your sleeping posture is, I like it. Yun Shirshir was stunned. Looking at the playful look in his eyes, she suddenly reacted. Pointing at him, she complained, You weren't teasing me just now, were you? You just realized? Mu Yaja moved his face closer to hers. The playful smile in his eyes had a tinge of naughtiness as their noses touched. I like to tease you. He liked to see her flustered and helpless, like an anxious little bunny. Chapter 1645. This was probably one of the few disgusting interests that he could enjoy. Yun Shirshir punched him hard, but even though she used a lot of strength, it did not hurt him at all. He could not help but laugh. To him, this little fellow's strength was not worth mentioning at all. Mu Yaja, why are you so bad? You actually lied to me and said that my sleeping posture was bad. Hey, do you know that I almost believed you? Yun Shirshir felt extremely wronged. She had actually been so stupid to believe his words and even seriously consider how to explain herself. But she did not expect that he was just teasing her. She was extremely unhappy. Why did she feel so stupid and gullible? Was it fun to tease her? Mu Yaja rubbed the tip of her nose and asked gently, Why are you getting out of bed now? I saw that you were so tired yesterday. Why don't you rest for a while more? His words fell into her ears, but they were extremely ambiguous. Seeing that she was so tired, his words made her recall the crazy scene from last night and her face became even hotter. She pushed him away and stood up from his body. She was afraid that he would see her blushing face and tease her again. So she walked to the bedside and pushed the window open slightly to let the breeze in from outside to cool down her burning face a little. Mu Yaja sat on the chair and turned around. He found it funny and said, What's the matter? Feeling shy? No way. Yun Shirshir turned around and glared at him. Stop teasing me, okay? He smiled and nodded, restraining himself a little. He knew that this stupid woman was especially thin-skinned. Some jokes should be stopped when appropriate. If they went overboard, even a rabbit would bite when anxious. Yun Shirshir suddenly asked, Are you free this afternoon? Mu Yaja replied. Actually, he still had a few cases to deal with in the afternoon. However, one of the standards of being a wife's slave was that whenever she asked if he was free or if he had time, it meant that she had something to do. Therefore, even if he had something to do, he had to answer yes. If he couldn't finish the case, he could leave it for tomorrow. He wasn't in a hurry anyway. She was number one. If Xianxia knew about this, she would definitely be touched to death. However, as a man, he would definitely want to save face. He couldn't let her know that he had rejected several cases for her. If she found out, she might secretly feel proud of herself. Seeing that he was free, Xianxia asked, "Can you come with me to pick someone up this afternoon?" "My father." Xianxia smiled. "He's coming back to Beijing today. He'll arrive at the train station in the afternoon. It should be around 4 o'clock. If you're free, come with me to pick him up." Mu Yaja smiled. "Okay, I'll accompany you." When Xianxia heard this, she was in a good mood. However, she suddenly thought of something and asked again, "Are you really free this afternoon? I see that you are usually very busy. I happen to be free this afternoon. But, love you." She hugged him by the shoulders and gave him a kiss before running to the bedroom to report to her father on the phone. Sure, can you prepare 2 cars this afternoon?" "No problem. Do you have a lot of luggage?" "It's like this." Chapter 1646. Xianxia was taken aback by his words. Xianxia found a secluded place and explained his purpose for coming. It turned out that Xianxia had initially refused to go to the capital for no other reason than that he knew what his wife was up to. She wanted to make use of this opportunity to escape from this destitute place and, by basking in Xiaoxi's limelight, secure a good job for her 2 daughters in the city. If she could find a decent job in the city, it would be a glorious thing. This job, however, was another matter altogether. She was mainly thinking that if she could find a wealthy husband for her 2 daughters in the city, then she wouldn't have to worry about the rest of her life. Furthermore, with Xianxia in the city, she would not have to work so hard to serve him. She even planned to find a second love and marry another man in the city. After all, she was still young in her 40s. She could not let Xianxia drag her down for the rest of her life. If she could marry another man, she would decisively kick away the crippled Xianxia and live a happy life of her own. Women, after all, husband and wife were birds in the same forest, but they would fly away in the face of disaster. Moreover, there was a saying that went, "A fine bird chooses a tree to nest in." Xianxia was crippled and had lost his ability to work. He would have to rely on others to take care of him for the rest of his life. She did not want to be a coolie, so she naturally had the idea of looking for a better job. How could he not see through her thoughts? After being married for so many years, he had long figured out what she was thinking. Moreover, he was now crippled, so his mind was very sensitive. When a person reached this stage, they would be able to see things and people clearly. It was especially so at this time that one could see through people's hearts. Therefore, he did not want to be a burden to Xianxia, so he repeatedly emphasized that he would stay in his hometown and not go to the capital. Alas, no matter how his wife and daughters persuaded him, he would not waver. His wife was almost angered to death by him. In the end, it was Xianxia who came to persuade him. He told him, "Brother, I'm bringing you to the capital so that I can take better care of you. It's been hard on you these past few decades. I'm the one who made you suffer. You don't have to worry about whether going to Shangjing will bring me any burden or trouble. This isn't something you should be worried about. Moreover, you're my younger brother. This is what I should do. Don't tell me you want me to leave you at home and watch you suffer. How can I, as your older brother, stand by and watch? I've seen everything you've done for the past few decades. When I was in my prime, you quietly took care of my old mother for me. When I was down and out, you secretly came to the capital and gave me your hard-earned money. And these past few decades, you've been fulfilling filial piety on my behalf. You've been responsible for so many years. You've been responsible for so many things that you shouldn't be responsible for. Now that you can't bear it anymore, it's time for me, your older brother, to take responsibility for you. Mother is no longer here, and you are one of the few things I care about in this world. Come with me to the capital and let me take good care of you. Now that life is better, And Xianxia is also working hard. I have nothing to worry about other than you. Chapter 1647. Aho, don't say such things. In any case, I've already made up my mind to bring you back to the capital. You don't have to throw a tantrum, just listen to my arrangements. Yun Yeho was touched by this, but he could not say anything about it. Now that Yun Yeqing was bringing Yun Yeho to the capital, his troublesome wife and 2 daughters would, of course, follow suit. As a result, Xiang Yu and her 2 daughters had packed their bags and followed him excitedly to the capital to enjoy life. As mentioned earlier, when Yun Yeho was young, he worked at a construction site and earned enough money to build a new house in his hometown. After building the new house, he married his wife and gave birth to a pair of daughters. What happened in the end? Although they were not rich at first, they still led a stable life. Man proposes, God disposes. Yun Yeho got injured while working and became half paralyzed. With his pillar of support collapsing, the burden of living naturally fell on his wife's shoulders. She had a seriously ill mother-in-law and a half-paralyzed husband at home. Logically speaking, if he got injured at the construction site, it would be considered a work injury and he should be compensated. Alas, the contractor ran away with the workers' hard-earned money and could not be found. Not to mention compensation, he did not even get a single cent of his salary. As a result, he could only enjoy some subsidies from the village and rely on the few acres of farmland at home for his income. His wife was willing to work hard without complaint at first, but as time passed, she began to complain. Others were gradually leading better lives, but what about her? It was bad enough that her husband was useless, but he even became half-paralyzed while working at the construction site. Was this not equivalent to living as a widow? Not to mention earning money, she could not even live a normal life as a married couple. Although she had 2 daughters, she was not even 40 years old. She was at the age when she needed to live a life as a married couple. Now that she was half-paralyzed, she was practically a widow. This was even better. During the day, she had to farm outside, and when she returned, she had to take care of a seriously ill mother-in-law. Yun Yeho, who was bedridden, also needed to be taken care of. Gradually, her complaints increased. As a woman, she was also bullied outside. After all, the only man in the family had collapsed, so the villagers looked down on her and often made things difficult for her. At this time, one of her daughters failed to enter a university, so she sent her to work at the factory. As for the other, she was more promising and managed to enter a university. In the end, when she found the passbook at home, she found that the money in it had disappeared without a trace. With the passbook in hand, Xiang Yu went to Yun Yeho's sickbed and questioned him about the whereabouts of his money. Yun Yeho's mind at first. Later on, Xiang Yu threw a tantrum at home, smashing pots and bowls, which alarmed her 2 daughters. It was only then that Yun Yeho stuttered and explained that when Yun Yeqing's family was in dire straits a year or 2 ago, he had secretly given him a sum of money to tide him over when he went to the capital to visit his relatives. How could his wife let it go when she heard that? She began to pester him to ask Yun Yeqing for the money back. Yun Yeho refused. First, it was because he would lose face. The money had already been given out, so how could he ask for it back? Chapter 1648. She stomped her feet in anger. She cried, threw a tantrum and threatened to hang herself, but her husband was adamant and did not care. In the end, her heart turned cold toward him. Honestly speaking, Yun Yeho's handling of this matter was indeed not perfect, so much so that Xiang Yu began to wonder if her husband was being too biased toward her brother's family, even though there was no fairness in this matter. Her husband was having a hard time, but did her family have it easy? At most, they would go bankrupt, but not only did she lose her source of income, but she also had to take care of a sick and disabled person. Now that their daughter was going to university, they had lost all their money. What was the meaning of this? Because of this, their younger daughter could not complete her university studies and had no choice but to work in a factory with their elder daughter. Because of this, she bore a grudge against them and even became sloppy when it came to taking care of her mother-in-law and husband. When Yun Yeqing found out about this when he went back to attend the funeral, he felt very apologetic and said that he wanted to compensate her with the money. Although the money was paid, the woman could not get rid of the hatred in her heart. Although she appeared polite on the surface, she did not buy it in her heart. What was the point of returning the money? Because of this, her daughter could not complete her university studies. This became her lifelong regret. One must know that having a university student in the family was a respectable thing. It was all ruined because of her husband's family. There was one more thing that he did not know. Sometimes, when she returned home late, it was not because she had just returned from the fields. Instead, it was because she had an affair with a bachelor next door behind his back, and the other party gave her a few hundred yuan for it. Everyone in the village knew that she was having an affair behind Yun Yeho's back, but he was kept in the dark. Hence, many people in the village secretly laughed at him. Everyone in the village laughed at Xiangyu for being a loose woman. Anyway, her reputation had been spread out. They all said that she was a woman who did not abide by the virtues of a wife. When Yun Yecheng returned to his hometown this time, he also heard some gossip. He was furious and had many opinions about this woman. However, in order to avoid agitating him, he suppressed the urge to bring it up. Still, he did not have a good impression of this woman. His wife was the one who had shamelessly suggested this trip to the capital. Hence, he decided to find her a place to rent out once they reached the capital. He couldn't let Xiangyu become Shishir's burden. At 4 in the afternoon, Yun Shishir and Mu Yaja arrived at the station early in the morning. Each of them drove a Mercedes-Benz SUV. Mu Yaja especially called for bodyguards to clear the road to prevent paparazzi from taking photos. They were all public figures. Naturally, they had to be on guard when they appeared in public. When the car arrived at the station, Yun Yecheng gave her a call. Yun Yecheng was stunned to see Mu Yaja, who was dressed in casual wear, standing in front of him, looking tall and slender. He then looked at Yun Shishir with suspicion in his eyes. "Shishir, isn't this your university professor?" Yun Shishir coughed and said, "Dad, let's go home first. There are too many people here, so it's not convenient to talk." All right. Yun Yecheng nodded and then turned to the wheelchair-bound Yun Yeho. "Aho, this is Shishir. Can you still recognize her when she grows up?" Chapter 1649. Yun Yeho stared at her for a long time before realization dawned on him. "Oh my, Shishir, it's really you. I recognize you. He grabbed her hand and patted it as he lamented, "Shishir has grown up and is even prettier than when she was young. A girl changes 18 times between childhood and womanhood." Tears welled up in his eyes as he lamented. Xiangyu and Yun Yeho's daughters, who were standing behind them, had ugly looks on their faces. However, they quickly suppressed their feelings of discomfort. Inwardly, Xiangyu thought, "We're not his daughters, so why is he being so affectionate?" Yun Shishir glanced at her mother and her 2 daughters behind her before walking up to them with a smile. "This must be Auntie, right? Nice to meet you, Auntie." Xiangyu smiled. Of course, she had to do it well. She said enthusiastically, "Oh, Shishir. It's you. Look, you've changed so much since you've grown up that Auntie couldn't recognize you." At the side, her eldest daughter, Yun Qingmiao, suddenly asked, Sister Shishir looks different from when she was young. I can't tell." Yun Qingmiao was 3 years older than Yun Shishir and had met her once when she was young. Her other daughter, Yun Qinli, said disapprovingly, "Sis, how many years has it been since you last saw Shishir? You must have forgotten how she looks like." Yun Shishir smiled and sweetly greeted, "Sister Qingmiao, Sister Qinli." The 2 sisters went forward and shook hands with her, but for some reason, Yun Qinli looked at her strangely. Yun Qinli didn't really like her. After all, if not for Yun Yecheng's matter, she would not have failed to attend university and become a laughingstock. Mu Yaja walked forward, but when he appeared in front of the sisters, he instantly attracted the attention of the mother-daughter trio. He was too dazzling. Even though he was wearing sunglasses and a low-key casual outfit, standing silently beside Yun Shishir, it was hard to ignore his powerful aura. His presence was too strong. Yun Qinli had only noticed Yun Shishir at first, but Yun Qingmiao, on the other hand, had been sneaking glances at him from the start. Oh God, this man is so handsome. He was dressed so fashionably. Looking at the leather jacket he was wearing, it was obvious that it was expensive. Everything he was wearing was branded, right? This man must be very rich or has a good family background, right? Could it be Yun Shishir's boyfriend? Xiangyu also noticed him. She tugged on Yun Shishir's sleeve and secretly asked, This? Yun Shishir was once again put in a difficult position. At the side, Mu Yaja said expressionlessly, Hello, Auntie, I am Shishir's husband. The sudden sound made Yun Shishir choke on her saliva. She snapped back to reality and glared at him unhappily. This man, how could he talk to himself? He had just proposed and had yet to register his marriage. How could he be considered her husband? Mu Yaja received her angry glare and smiled. What's wrong? Why are you so shy? Husband? Everyone exclaimed in unison in shock, but they all cast their gazes on them in disbelief. No one was more surprised than Yun Yeqing. This man, wasn't he her university professor? Why did he return to his hometown to visit his family for only a few months and become her future son-in-law? Yun Yeho's eyes widened as well. Chapter 1650. Yun Qingmiao pressed on. That's right. I haven't heard that you're married in our hometown, and there's no wedding banquet either. Have you guys registered your marriage? Yun Shishir was a little embarrassed as she answered, We haven't registered our marriage yet. Everyone's expression became even weirder when they heard that. Yun Yeqing, in particular, furrowed his brows and glared at his future son-in-law as if he were looking at a love rival. He was somewhat suspicious, afraid that the latter was a bad guy who had appeared out of nowhere to kidnap his daughter. His eyes were full of wariness as he sized him up. Mu Yaja also sensed the unfriendliness in his father's gaze. He turned to look at him and gave him a deep smile. On the other side, when Xiangyu heard Yun Shishir's words, she was a little picky. How can you be considered my husband when you haven't registered your marriage? Yun Shishir was about to reply when Mu Yaja spoke first. Shishir is my wife. Whether we register our marriage or not doesn't mean anything. His domineering and firm attitude made Xiangyu swallow her words with just one sentence. Suddenly, she sized up Mu Yaja again before her gaze finally landed on the branded watch on his wrist. He was dressed very low-key today, and this watch was probably the only thing on him that symbolized his status. Yun Qingmiao also saw the watch on Mu Yaja's wrist. Startled, she leaned close to her mother's ear and whispered, Mum, this man seems to be very rich. He's wearing a Vacheron Constantin watch. This watch costs at least a few 100,000 yuan, and the more expensive ones cost millions. Vacheron Constantin? Her mother was shocked and even more incredulous. She had never heard of this watch. Yun Qingmiao only knew about it because the boss of the factory she worked at wore this watch. She heard that it cost a few 100,000 yuan. It was so expensive that it cost millions. She had never seen it before, though. Well, watch. One for a few million. At this moment, the way she looked at Mu Yaja changed slightly. There was an unusual sizing up and satisfaction in her eyes. Hee, why don't I know that Shishir has a boyfriend? Shishir, this is a major event in your life. Look at your father, he seems to be kept in the dark. Did you not tell him about it? If you ask me, before she could finish her words, Mu Yaja lost his patience and interrupted her. Shishir and I don't need you to worry about our marriage. I've already ordered people to pick an auspicious date. I'll give Shishir a perfect wedding. Once again, Xiangyu's words were blocked. She had nothing else to say, and her expression was a little awkward. Yun Yeho, who was standing at the side, said, You talk too much, Xiangyu. It's not up to you to worry about Shishir's boyfriend. She was embarrassed. Yun Yeqing kindly replied, Hey, don't say that. I'm just concerned about Shishir. Xiangyu rolled her eyes inwardly. Care my ass. Who's asking you? Yun Qingmiao and Yun Qinli, who were standing at the side, looked at each other and kept quiet. Yun Qinli, in particular, felt even more indignant. I hate this Yun Shishir. If not for Yun Yeqing's family, she would have gone to university. Now that she did not go to university, she had no choice but to work in the factory with her elder sister. Working 12 hours a day, she only earned 2,000 to 3,000 yuan a month. What about Yun Shishir, though? How did she find such a handsome husband to be? He was tall and handsome, even more handsome than the popular male celebrities on TV. Most importantly, his family background seemed to be quite good. Chapter 1651. What was that saying again? Comparisons were odious indeed. Muyaja's phone rang all of a sudden. He walked to the side and picked up the call. On the other end, Minyu informed him that the board of directors had some complaints after he postponed the meeting in the afternoon. Muyaja snorted. Can't you handle this matter? Minyu wanted to cry. Why did he have to take over this mess? After a moment of silence, he cautiously asked, Boss, about tonight's dinner, I have something on. What is it? You're meddling too much. Minyu fell silent again. Then, Muyaja said, book a private room at West Tai Lake Restaurant tonight. I have a guest to entertain. Out of curiosity, Minyu asked, who is it? A certain man said seriously, my future father-in-law. Minyu, what's wrong? He snapped back to his senses. Okay, boss. I'll arrange it for you right away. Yun Qingmiao stole a few more glances at Muyaja's direction and secretly asked her younger sister, Sister, look at his phone. What brand is it? It looks like the one the boss uses. You're mistaken. The boss is using Apple's latest model, which costs a few thousand yuan. The one he's using seems to be of an inferior brand. Is that so? Then, I'm mistaken. I thought he's using Apple. Yun Qingmiao smiled. In their eyes, Apple phones were probably the most identifiable phones on the market. They were expensive and beautiful, and many people would spend months of their salary on them to make themselves look good. When they looked at Muyaja's phone again and saw no logo, they thought it was of an inferior brand. They were confused for a moment. This man is wearing such an expensive watch, so why is his phone of an inferior brand? It's too degrading. If Muyaja heard this, however, he would burst out laughing. This phone was a global limited edition custom-made by a technology company for high-end customers. Therefore, there was no logo on it, making it luxurious yet low-key. Yun Yeqing suddenly pulled Yun Shirshir aside and asked in a hushed voice, Shirshir, is what he said true? What? He's your boyfriend? Her father was perplexed. Didn't you tell Dad that he's your university professor? How did he become your boyfriend when Dad wasn't around? When did this happen? In fact, he was well aware of the man's identity. Yun Shirshir had lied to him and said that he was a university professor. However, he had seen this man standing next to Yu at the hospital that time. Their facial features were so similar. How could she lie to him? Hence, he guessed that this man was from the Mu family. But the Mu family in the capital, however, he was from a wealthy family with such a high threshold. He was afraid that Shirshir would be wronged if she were to be with this man. Dead. Yun Shirshir did not know what he was worried about. She hugged his arm coquettishly. I'll explain this to you when we get back, okay? Yun Yeqing's expression softened as he nodded. Alright. You're not young anymore, so it's understandable for you to find a partner. However, you must keep your eyes open when you're looking for a partner. If you're going to spend the rest of your life together, you must find someone you like and suitable. Okay, but I'll follow your teachings. Yun Shirshir said mischievously. Chapter 1652. Muyaja walked up to him and said, Uncle, Shirshir and I have prepared a welcome banquet for your return to the capital. It's getting late, let's go. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Yun Yeqing politely declined. Muyaja smiled, but his tone was as domineering as ever. I'm all prepared. If you don't go, I'm afraid you'll be letting Shirshir down. Yun Shirshir chimed in, That's right, Dad. Uncle and Auntie will be here this time, along with my two sisters, so we must treat them well. Just go. Yun Yeqing could not persuade her otherwise. Thus, Muyaja and Yun Shirshir took his luggage and walked toward the car parked at the entrance. Yun Qingmiao had just reached the entrance when she saw two Mercedes-Benz cars parked there. One was a black Mercedes-Benz AMG, while the other was a white Mercedes-Benz AMG. Yun Qingmiao did not understand cars, but she could recognize the logo. Just the Mercedes-Benz logo alone was enough to shock her, and there were two of them. This time, she was certain that Yun Shirshir's boyfriend was not simple. Jealousy grew in her heart. Yun Shishir busied herself with putting their luggage into the car. Yun Yeqing was trying to think of a way to carry his brother into the car when Mu Yaja stopped him. He bent over and, with a little force, easily carried his brother into the back seat of the car. This hormonal action made Yun Qingmiao and Yun Qinli blush and their hearts beat faster. Yun Shishir put the luggage in place, closed the trunk, and walked to the two sisters with a smile. Sister Qingmiao, Sister Qinli, get in the car. Yun Qingmiao frowned, feeling a little uncomfortable. She did not know why, but standing in front of Yun Shishir, she felt ashamed of her inferiority. Today, Yun Shishir was wearing a socialite blouse, slim-fit trousers, soft UGG boots, and a snow-white trendy jacket. She looked pure and charming. Just like her name, she was gentle and elegant. One look and one could tell that she was a lady from a prestigious family. She exuded an aristocratic aura from head to toe, which made Yun Shishir feel inexplicably inferior. She lowered her head and looked at herself. Her clothes had been washed until they were white, and her shoes were so worn that they could not be seen. Her hair was disheveled from the long train ride, and her skin was tanned and rough due to long-term exposure to the sun. There was an indescribable sadness and envy. Earlier, when Yun Shishir addressed her as Sister Qingmiao, it made her feel uncomfortable. Yun Shishir, that name. Poetic and artistic. She then looked at her name, Yun Qingmiao, which was uncouth and unpleasant to the ears. Why was the name Yun Yeho gave her so uncouth? When Yun Shishir saw her expression, she frowned suspiciously. What's wrong? Don't call me by my name. But Yun Shishir was baffled. Your name is so nice. It's so embarrassing that my name is so uncouth and unpleasant, retorted Yun Qingmiao. Yun Shishir smiled. No, I think Sister Qingmiao's name is very nice. Please, don't try to coax me. It's so embarrassing. I think that names are given by parents, so no matter what I'm called, I think it's nice. Yun Shishir gave him a serious look. Chapter 1653. He. Yun Yeqing's face was flushed red. When they got into the car, Yun Qingmiao pointed at Mu Yaja's car and asked, Shishir, can Qinli and I sit in this car? Sure. You can sit anywhere you want. Since both cars were spacious, it was not a problem for them to sit together. Yun Qingmiao and Yun Qinli, however, were unwilling to do so. They wanted to sit in Mu Yaja's car, so Yun Yeho, Yun Yeqing, and Xiangyu sat in Yun Shishir's car. The two sisters, on the other hand, sat in Mu Yaja's car. The moment Yun Qinli got in, she was shocked by the spacious interior. Every detail of the Mercedes-Benz Gulsamg, an imported SUV, was high-end. Leather seats, panoramic sunroof, and streamlined body. Thus, when the sisters got into the car, they felt a little uneasy and restrained. Somehow, they felt that this car was too high-end and expensive. The car started moving slowly. Mu Yaja kept his eyes fixed on the front as he held the steering wheel and led the way. Yun Shishir's car followed behind. He drove a little slowly, seemingly taking into account that she was inexperienced in driving, so he did not drive too fast for fear that she would not be able to keep up with him. After getting used to it for a while, Yun Qingmiao finally relaxed her body. She leaned forward slightly and leaned on the back of the driver's seat. Through the rearview mirror, she silently sized up Mu Yaja's side profile. He had an arrogant lower jaw and flawless facial features. He was handsome and resolute, and his eyes exuded an incomparably noble and arrogant aura. She could not help feeling a little infatuated. She had never seen such a handsome man before, especially this man. Not only was he good-looking, but he also came from a wealthy family and was very charming. No woman could resist such extraordinary charm in front of him. She was no exception. Her heart was stirred. Thus, she asked with a grin, "What's your name?" Yun Qinli, who saw that her sister actually dared to strike up a conversation with this unapproachable man, was instantly interested and moved forward. Mu Yaja stared at him, but his voice was cold. "In the future, you can call me brother-in-law." "Brother-in-law?" Yun Qingmiao laughed dryly at that. "That's not very nice, is it? You're not even engaged yet, so it's not appropriate for me to call you brother-in-law now." Mu Yaja frowned slightly but did not say anything. Tell me your name, I don't even know your name. Yun Qinli also chimed in, that's right. Mu Yaja suddenly said, pay attention to your seats. Yun Qingmiao and Yun Qinli exchanged glances before turning to look at their seats curiously, not understanding what he meant. What do you mean? I don't understand. Mu Yaja said, seatbelt. Yun Qingmiao grabbed the seatbelt, but she was still confused. What's wrong with the seatbelt? Fasten it. Yun Qingmiao did not know whether to laugh or cry. Why are you fastening the seatbelt? Mu Yaja raised a brow impatiently and then turned the steering wheel abruptly, making a sharp turn. Caught off guard, the two sisters bumped into each other and nearly fell out of their seats. When the car returned to normal, the two sisters raised their heads in embarrassment and quickly fastened their seatbelts, not daring to say another word. This way, even if Yun Qingmiao wanted to talk to him, she could not do so due to the seatbelt. He did not like women other than Yun Xianxia to be so close to him. Chapter 1654. The car continued its journey. Yun Qingmiao and Yun Qinli whispered, Xianxia's boyfriend doesn't seem to be easy to get along with. That can't be, right? I saw him standing beside Xianxia just now, and his gaze was very gentle. Why is it that now? Look at him. Yun Qinli gestured at the man in the rearview mirror. He was looking straight ahead with an aloof expression and some lingering fear. Along the way, Mu Yaja did not speak or respond to them. Even when the two tried to strike up a conversation, he did not respond. He gives off an unapproachable feeling. Yun Qinli suddenly whispered. I think he must be a henpecked husband. A typical henpecked husband who only listens to his wife. Look at him. He's cold and indifferent when other women talk to him. It's obvious that he doesn't want to talk to us. Is that so? Yun Qingmiao clicked her tongue in a sarcastic manner. Yun Qinli pinched her in trepidation. Can you keep your voice down? Oh, it's fine. Yun Qingmiao continued to size him up through the rearview mirror in a daze after saying that. All of a sudden, she muttered indignantly, sigh. Comparisons are odious. Why didn't I meet such a good man? Why does she have to encounter so many good things? If I had such a boyfriend, I'd be overjoyed. Yun Qinli said unhappily, I really don't know what kind of fate she has. I don't think she's that good. She doesn't deserve this man. Maybe he's just playing with her and it won't work out in the end. She lowered her voice, thinking that Mu Yaja could not hear her. Unexpectedly, Mu Yaja's hearing was so amazing that he heard their whispers loud and clear. Impatient, he reached out to change the air conditioner's gear and blew the cold air into the back seat. He was cold-resistant, and since he had turned off the air conditioner vent in the driver's seat, he could not feel the cold air. The back seat was not so comfortable, though. Cold air was coming out of the room, blowing. Yun Qingmiao and Yun Qinli only realized later that the car was a little cold. They hugged their bodies and shivered. It's so cold. Why is it so cold in the car? She asked gloomily. Yun Qinli also knew that she was shivering. She said with a strange expression, that's strange. Why did the car suddenly become cold? After a pause, she discussed with Mu Yaja, why don't we turn on the heater? It's too cold. However, Mu Yaja said, the heater is broken. Yun Qinli, how could it be broken? Oh my God. Thus, Yun Qingmiao and Yun Qinli kept blowing cold air all the way. Minyu had arranged for him to stay at Wenbi Villa Hotel. When they got out of the car at the hotel, Yun Qingmiao and Yun Qinli were hugging each other's shoulders. They were clearly freezing. After a certain two-faced man got out of the car, he swept them a glance before gracefully slamming the car door and walking toward Yun Xianxia's car. Yun Qingmiao and Yun Qinli looked at his back view. They opened their mouths, wanting to say something, but hesitated. Xiangyu walked up to them and touched Yun Qingmiao's hand, which was cold to the touch, which gave her a shock. Why are your hands so cold? Yun Qingmiao said aggrievedly, the heater in the car is broken, and we've been freezing the whole way. Shielding her daughter, Xiangyu said angrily, what lousy car is this? How can the heater be broken?